Chapter 601. Vast divine power filled the ice field that had been dyed in rainbow colors. The 12 rays of divine light were filled with majestic and magnificent divine aura. It was as if a king had descended. The moment it descended, the entire ice field, and the ice field within a radius of 1,000 miles, began to blend and change. The colors of the ice field were constantly changing with the divine aura. As for Yin Nuoshing, who was standing in the black vortex and had caused all these reactions, he looked at all of this in a daze. He only felt that there was a ray of light that had seen through him completely. His past, his strength, and everything about him were clearly probed. This strange feeling was indescribable. It was as if a switch in his body had been pressed. Even his soul was cheering under the brilliant colors. Immediately after, 12 huge, colorful halos descended from the sky. Each halo was at least 6 feet tall. They were more than twice as big as the halos that Xian and the others had. The dazzling patterns on them covered the entire halo. The 12 huge halos were like the 12 pillars of light, quietly switching between colors and blacks. Divine runes and demonic runes gushed out from the 12 pillars, covering the halos and drilling into his mind. Instantly, a huge amount of information flooded him like an ocean, causing him to feel a little dizzy. But what made him astonished was that under the cover of the 12 halos and pillars of light, the multicolored runes on his body actually slowly grew a little. They didn't elongate, but rather they were like branches and leaves. The flower bud on his chest actually moved slightly, but it was quickly suppressed by an even more powerful force. The light gradually faded. The colorful ice plains also slowly turned into a normal ice blue. The divine imprint that Xian Yin had left behind appeared on Yin Nuoshing's forehead. Together with the black pearl, it was full of majesty and nobility. He stood there quietly, but it was as if he was standing on the clouds and looking down on all living things. After retreating from the star field, Yin Nuoshing blinked his clear, colorful eyes. He looked at Ning Qianxue, who was in a daze, and asked, "Sister Shui, what's going on? You said that the content of the next test would only be displayed after one test is completed, right? I have a total of 12 tests here. Why is it displayed all at once?" Ning Qianxue came back to her senses after hearing his voice. She looked at him blankly for a while, then said dully, "I don't know. What's your test?" Xian walked over and asked. Yin Nuoshing pondered for a moment, indicating that she needed some time to sort it out. Then she asked, "What about you guys?" "I killed a God King level demonic beast and obtained a beast soul. I connected with it and began cultivating." Nightmare said in a deep voice. He had an ugly expression on his face. He was only at the 2nd seal of the devil rank, yet he wanted to kill a God King rank devil beast. Moreover, he wanted to obtain its soul. The production rate of this thing wasn't very high. Yuanxi was slightly taken aback when he heard this. Then he said, "Me too, but I had to kill a God King level demonic beast." Xian and the others calmly looked at their own tests. After a while, they opened their eyes. Qin Yin said with a strange expression, "They want me to be able to refine top-grade gems and crystals. I've just stepped into the devil rank, so I'm only an excellent jewel master. I'm 2 levels away from that. Defeat the ancient spirit godly phoenix on the Demon God Mountain in the southern plains and tame it." Xian said with a strange expression. Why do I feel that your tests all sound so simple, while Yuer's tests sound so difficult?" Yuer couldn't help but cry out when she heard everyone's test content. She muttered, "Yuer has to master the power of the half-devil rank within a year. I can only master the power of the 6th immortal rank now. Hey, it takes 1 year to go from the 6th immortal rank to the half-devil rank. It's also 1 year. Why do I have to go from the 7th immortal rank directly to the devil rank?" Little Moon pouted unhappily. Ning Qianxue blinked her beautiful eyes and stared at Yin Nuoshing nonstop. Suddenly, she seemed to have seen something and hurriedly walked to his side. Her jade-like hand stretched out as fast as lightning. He was so scared that he hurriedly closed his eyes. Then, he only felt his hair being rubbed for a while. A little bit of weight was born from nothing. His 2-foot-long, colorful hair fluttered in the wind. He turned his head and saw that Ning Qianxue was holding his soul-stabilizing bracelet. She was somewhat absent-minded. Starry sky, star token. Ning Qianxue looked at the soul-fixing bracelet in shock. A strange voice came out of her mouth. Zian and the others, who were hurriedly stroking Yin Nuoxing's hair, were stunned. They raised their heads and looked at each other. Then they asked in confusion, Starry sky, star token, the thing that is said to be protected by the starry sky star? Golden Princess was also stunned at this moment. She stared blankly at the soul-fixing bracelet in Ning Qianxue's hand. She had only heard of this thing before. Yes, and it's the key to the shortcut to the little divine land. Ning Qianxue nodded. She walked behind Yin Nuoxing and put on her long hair. Her 6-foot-long hair shrank back to the length of her thighs in 2 breaths. Then she said, "No wonder it's the 12th test. Other than your physique, it's also because of this thing. As for the specifics, I'm not too sure. This kind of test should have other meanings and names in ancient times. The test of the starry sky star, right?" Yin Nuoxing suddenly said. He had seen some vague introductions from the pile of books from the mythological era. Ever since he got the soul-fixing bracelet from the 6 paths of reincarnation, he paid some attention to the words starry sky, star token. It took him a long time to find this thing in his mind that was related to it. It should be, I don't know. Although I've reached this level, it doesn't mean that my path has come to an end. There are many things that I still don't understand. Just like this magical test of the starry sky star. It can even test people at our level. Who do you think set the test in the first place? Ning Qianxue sighed. By the way, little star, what is your test? Zian asked, playing with his long hair. Yin Nuoxing was stunned. His expression changed slightly. He rubbed the black bead between his eyebrows with his fingers, smiled bitterly, and said, "These 12 tests are 12 trials. The first one is to go to the Yuanguang Academy in the southern part of the Taiyuan domain and undergo the trial of light. You need to pass the 7th level of difficulty. The second one is to go to the Yanli Academy in the Ganyuan domain and undergo the trial of fire. You need to pass the 7th level of difficulty and go to the Fengyin Mountain to help Zian retrieve the origin of fire. The third one is the trial of ice. The fourth one is the trial of wood. The fifth one is the trial of gold. The sixth one is the trial of wind. From the 7th one onwards, the names are a little scary. Metal, purgatory, heaven's punishment, thunder, purgatory, buried mountain sea, realm of nothingness, secret realm of life. And the last one is the 12th one, the desperate dark realm. When everyone heard these names, their expressions changed slightly. Ziyin and the others were still fine, as they all understood the names. However, the Golden Queen and the others were like flickering candles, flickering between light and darkness. The Empress couldn't help but swallow her saliva. This is going to kill my little brother. What kind of bullsh asterisk T test is this? Can I not go? Indeed, let's not talk about the places we're going to cover almost the entire realm of the gods. Some things are even in the starry sky. Just the difficulty alone. I know about the Yuanguang Academy. The trial of light is used by the academy to test the students' cultivation results. There are 12 levels in total. Ordinary demon-level students are considered geniuses if they can pass the 4th level. 7th level. Not many deity-level elders can pass it. The Golden Queen's expression didn't look too good either. The Yuanguang Academy was somewhat related to the Light Temple. It could be considered half an academy under the Light Temple. However, the Trial of Light wasn't left behind by the Light Temple. It was left behind by an ancient deity-level master. It was a test related to the light element. However, it wasn't only targeted at people who had the light element. Even people who had other elements could undergo trials and cultivation inside. Hearing this, Yin Nuoxing could only sigh helplessly and shake his head. This spiritual, godly body, what are you doing? Aren't you being treated specially? The trial of light, that's the light element. It's broken. When you really try it, you'll know how to write the word cry. The Golden Queen looked at him silently. This test is indeed very difficult. Not only Brother Nuo, but Zian and the others' tests aren't simple either. Other than you, and Qin, Yin, who only need to cultivate, The rest of you will have to fight with your lives on the line. Yishi looked at Yin Nuoxing and the others worriedly. When Yin Nuoxing, Xian, Yuan Shi, and Nightmare heard this, they were all stunned. They looked at each other, and there was a hint of bitterness in their eyes. However, the three of them looked at Yin Nuoxing with more worry. It was fine if they couldn't pass, and they weren't determined to get the void fire. However, he came for it. Although they didn't know what this trial had to do with the void fire, they were relieved that Ning Qianxue, the great god, wouldn't lie to them for no reason. Yin Nuoxing rubbed his face and turned his gaze to Enlishine and the others. He blinked and suddenly smiled. Sisterin, can Xian and the others ask you for help? Enlishine and the others, who had been in the background and didn't speak, were stunned. They all turned their gazes and saw his faint smile. They seemed to understand something. No problem. Isn't it just a fight? Leave it to us. As long as they can hold on. Lei Lang's palm, which was the size of a futon, patted his chest and laughed loudly. His laughter made the ice field tremble. Yin Nuoxing smiled and nodded. Xian and the others all had to fight with demonic beasts and magical beasts. There were 6 demon emperors around them. It would be good for them to practice. By the way, can someone help from the side in this trial? Yuan Shi raised his hand and asked. Yes, but the moment someone helps, the difficulty will change, Ning Qianxue said with a smile. Ning Qianxue smiled and nodded. She said, and the difficulty of the transformation depends on the person who helps you. Then forget it. Yuan Shi shook his head with a bitter smile. He originally wanted to ask Yin Nuoxing for help. The latter could kill a godly master demonic beast with a divine artifact easily. If he borrowed Yin Nuoxing's power, he would have to fight with a demon emperor. Since Yuan Shi was asked to fight a godly master-level demonic beast alone, he must have taken the divine artifact into consideration. With the help of the fiery red cauldron, he could fight a godly master-level demonic beast with all his might, although he would most likely lose. Yin Nuoxing paused for a moment, turned his head, and looked at Feng, who had been standing quietly beside him. He whispered, Feng, what about your trial? Feng was still looking at the sky in a daze. When she heard him ask about her, she slowly came back to her senses. Mei Mao stared at him and whispered, Within 3 years, I will turn into a cocoon once. Wow! Hearing this, Little White almost fell to the ground. His face darkened, and he could not help but scold. The cultivation of the 4 mythical beasts is already difficult. Although we bear the fate of heaven and earth, the difficulty of turning into a cocoon is also many times more difficult than ordinary demonic beasts. Yin Nuoxing was speechless. This was the same reason why other demonic beasts could transform at the demon level, but Feng are only transformed at the elementary god level. The last time Phoenix turned into a cocoon, it hasn't even been a year. She has to do it again in 3 years. I think she is too stubborn. Little White's indignant look made everyone speechless. It seemed that the difficulty was not ordinary. Otherwise, why would this guy be so agitated? One is going to the southern part of Taiyuan domain, one is going to Nanyuan, 2 are going to hone their combat skills, and the other 4 are going to cultivate. Their destinations are all different. It seems that we have to split up, the Golden Princess said softly with her hands folded in front of her. The Golden Princess looked at Xian, Yuan Shi, and the others, then at the Empress and Enlishine, and said, How about this? I will bring Xian to Nanyuan and throw them back home or to the 9 Deities Shrine. You guys can bring Little Star to Yuanguan College. As for me, there is no need. I have a soul contract with Little Star. If I cultivate by Little Star's side, there will be 2 people's cultivation speed. It will be faster. Feng shook her head and said something that made everyone speechless. I can wait for Little Star to complete the training, then go. Xian raised his hand weakly and looked at the Golden Princess carefully. Finally, he looked at Yin Nuoxing with his sparkling eyes. Everyone, woof, 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 woof. The Golden Princess clutched her head as if she was about to collapse. She felt that her head was about to split open. Great, everyone was sticking to Yin Nuoxing and not leaving. Even Yin Nuoxing was speechless. She wanted to persuade them, but the moment she opened her mouth, she said, That's fine. Anyway, You have to train well with Sister In and the others. You're not in a hurry." Once this sentence came out, the Golden Princess and Ning Qianshui's eyes were filled with resentment. Chapter 602. Aren't you coming with us? A group of people floated in the sky above the frozen snowfield. Looking at the horizon, they could see a withered yellow land. There was no snow there, but between the withered yellow land and the snow-white land, there was a long river with an unknown source. It was at least 100 feet wide, completely separating the two places. Among the group of people in the sky, the young man with long, colorful hair blew a mouthful of white frost into the air. Looking at the graceful and noble woman in front of him, he asked softly, "I kind of want to, but I'm going to investigate when the trial of the stars and stars was passed down. I've traveled across half of the god realm over the years, and I've seen similar things. There aren't many of them, and they're all hidden in inconspicuous places. There's even an inconspicuous rock by the side of the road, or a tree that doesn't look strange at all. The people who set up the trial probably didn't just leave something behind. There must be something more to it. I'm going to investigate it," the woman said with a faint smile as she flipped her icy blue hair. Yin Nuoshing nodded. Seeing that she was staring at him intently, he could not help but blush. He lowered his head and touched his cheeks with his fingers. He felt a little strange. Looking at this awkward, handsome face, Ning Qianxue couldn't help but chuckle. She took light steps and walked in front of him. Her jade-like hands gently tidied up the creases on his clothes and buttoned up his oversized windbreaker that was almost dragging on the ground. The scepter on the pendant is the key to a ruined temple in the southern plains. It hides everything about lunar shadow and can also contact me. When you decide to go, just tell me," Ning Qianxue said softly. Yin Nuoshing's eyes flickered. He took a deep breath and said, "In 1 or 2 years, no. After this trial of light is finished, I might go. I will go to the Divine Prefecture again, and then to the southern plains." "Okay, I will wait for you. I will wait for you no matter how long it takes." Ning Qianxue smiled sweetly. Although she still had that noble feeling at this moment, she was no different from a little girl. This made the Golden Queen and the others feel a little disillusioned. Shouldn't the so-called Lord God be the kind who was not afraid of anything and could do whatever he wanted? They did not understand. After Ning Qianxue finished speaking, she turned around indifferently and walked slowly towards the other side of the world of ice and snow. The wind and snow that had stopped started blowing again and quickly filled the scene. Yun Nuoshing opened her mouth and smiled bitterly as she watched the slender figure slowly disappear into the snowstorm. She turned around and smiled at everyone. "Let's go." Once again, he buried his feelings in the bottom of his heart and didn't tell anyone. His colorful eyes were still clear, but Xian and the others could see the vicissitudes of life in them, as well as some unfathomable emotions. "Let's go." However, Xian didn't ask anything. She just said softly and stood quietly beside him. The Golden Crown Princess looked at him meaningfully, but she did not ask anything. Somehow, she felt that Ning Qianxue was not joking. To put it bluntly, what reason would a high and mighty god have to lie to them? And if it was true, Yin Nuoshing's true identity was a little complicated. If they could prove that he was Feng Yueying, then the deepest secret since ancient times could be easily solved. Yueguan College is in the southern part of the Taiyuan region. This time, I will lead the way. We will probably go from the northernmost side. With the help of the portal, we will arrive in about a month. The Golden Queen calculated and raised a slender finger as she spoke. Yin Nuoshing looked up at the sky, took a deep breath, and muttered helplessly, "The work of traveling is the life of a person who is always on the move. In your entire life, you have always been on the move. You have traveled all over the world and never stayed in any place for more than 2 years." Little White, who had a soul contract with him, also saw all his memories when the contract was formed. At this time, she still had her arms crossed in front of her chest, looking noble and arrogant. Her eyelids drooped slightly as she spoke calmly. "Who asked me to, what was it again? It's a dead word." Yin Nuoshing smiled bitterly. Then he was stunned. He couldn't think of that word for a long time. "Let's go." The Golden Queen rolled her eyes. She waved her sleeves, and tore a huge hole in the space. Golden energy wrapped around everyone and plunged into the void. A month's time was neither long nor short. It didn't pass so quickly. Only when they arrived at their destination did they realize that a month had already passed. For everyone, except for the Golden Queen and Little White, who had been leading them on their journey, everyone else had closed their eyes a few times. For Yin Nuoxing, who couldn't cultivate or sleep, this month had almost driven him crazy. For the first time, he felt that life was so boring that he could only turn his boredom into appetite. He had completely transformed into a big foodie. The first time they passed by a city, he had practically swept through all the food and snacks in the city. In the Golden Queen's words, he was probably going to hibernate. When Yin Nuoxing and the others weren't cultivating, they would accompany him to eat, drink, and chat. They talked about everything under the sun. However, perhaps it was because of the unnecessary test, they were more diligent than usual in their cultivation. As a result, Yin Nuoxing was so bored that he could only curl up in the spiritual world and play chess with Exinair and Zai. That day, Yin Nuoxing thought of the fear of being dominated by the woman in the pink dress. Even Exinair and Zai were better at chess than him. He was basically completely defeated. He was completely defeated and covered in wounds. What kind of stupid punishment game was that? He wore female clothes for half a month and transformed into Uxian. The atmosphere during that half a month of traveling was so strange that it was like high pressure. Fortunately, that month finally came to an end. Uxian opened her eyes and looked at the sky, slowly changing from dark to bright. Only when the sun finally rose did she slowly take out the treasure map. She checked the location and looked at the city that had appeared in the distance. She couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. With a shake of her body, she returned to her aloof and profound appearance. However, there were still too many traces of a girl on her handsome face. Her pair of beautiful multicolored eyes sparkled like stars. "Wake up! We're here! We're here at Shabuang City! We're here at High Light Academy!" Suddenly, Yin Nuoxing roared towards the sky. Everyone who was meditating behind him trembled in fright and hurriedly exited their cultivation state. Although they were startled out of their cultivation state, the energy and mental energy in their bodies were still as stable as before. The stabilizing cultivation array that Yin Nuoxing had created could prevent them from being disturbed during cultivation. That was why this scene occurred. I say, little star, although the array you created can prevent us from suffering a backlash, your roar almost scared our souls away. Yuan Shi, who was dressed in white, raised his head and looked at Yin Nuoxing helplessly. However, when he saw Yin Nuoxing's lifeless appearance and the two thick dark circles under his eyes, he was so shocked that his mouth twitched. "Why are you so haggard? You've already exited your cross-dressing state. Boss should have her covered by now, right?" Nightmare scratched his head in confusion. "Why don't you try doing nothing for a month? Just sitting here and watching the sun rise from the east and set in the west, watching the moon rise from the east and set in the west, watching the sky as blue as the sea, watching the white clouds float around, watching the pitch-black void, watching... Damn, what the hell are you looking at? I want to die." Yin Nuoxing was originally speaking very calmly, but a thread in his head suddenly snapped, and he began to roar hysterically. Everyone felt heartache and helplessness when they saw Yin Nuoxing's manic and impatient expression. "In my next life, I definitely won't be a human anymore. I'll just be a bird and fly freely in the sky." After roaring for a while, Yin Nuoxing sat down angrily and ran his fingers through his messy hair. However, after a while, a pair of jade-like hands gently tidied his hair and clothes. "Stop roaring. Why don't I open the door now and take you back to the Light God Palace and ask the Light God King to help you? Seeing how obedient that little urchin is, I don't think he'll refuse to help," the Golden Queen said as she reached out and rubbed his handsome face. "I just want to sleep. I'm so tired." Yin Nuoxing smiled bitterly. "Then sleep. No one's stopping you." Behind him, a gentle voice rang out. Then a long snow-white tail stretched out in front of Yin Nuoxing and wrapped around his body, placing him on the Nether Void sword. He turned around and saw Lachine and Jingyu slowly walking over. "Good night." Yun Nuoxing collapsed, his eyes rolled back, and he fell into a deep sleep. Now, sleeping had become an extravagant hope for him. "Sister Jean, is there really no way to solve Little Star's situation?" Xian held his hand tightly. Seeing the exhaustion on Yun Nuoxing's face, Mei Mao asked the Golden Queen helplessly. "I don't know." The Golden Queen sighed in distress. "You asked me if I've seen anyone who has fallen to the dark side. Of course, there have been. For tens of millions of years, even the disciples of the Light God Palace have fallen to the dark side. However, there has never been a way to solve it. Even the elders of the Light God Palace have no way to solve it. The dark energy has merged into their spirit and soul. There's nothing they can do." The Silver Snake Demon Emperor looked up and said softly, "Similar situations will happen to the demonic beasts when they cultivate to the dark side. We have a secret technique that can cut off the part of the soul that has been tainted by the dark energy. However, it can be cultivated again, and there won't be a drop in level. However, after the soul is cut off, it will be greatly damaged. It will take 8 to 10 years to recover. Your idea is too lousy." Before the Golden Queen and the others could say anything, Jingyu glared at him. She had heard of this secret technique before. However, as demonic beasts, they didn't cultivate their souls much. Even if they were damaged, they could recover with some rest. However, Yun Nuoxing had put in a lot of effort into the power of the soul when he cultivated the power of the stars. How could it be cut off so easily? Let's talk about this when we return to the temple. It's useless to talk about it now. The Golden Queen sighed and shook her head. While waiting for Yun Nuoxing to fall asleep, Yuan Shi and Nightmare started fighting again. Xian originally wanted to spar with Qin Yin, but when she saw that Yun Nuoxing was sleeping peacefully, she put away that thought and quietly sat beside him, tightly holding his hand. After waiting for 6 hours, Yun Nuoxing finally woke up at noon. Seeing that the sun had already risen to the sky, he couldn't help but sigh. This sigh caused 4 pairs of beautiful eyes to look over. Seeing that he had woken up, they all smiled faintly. After getting up, everyone tidied up and put away the Netherruin swords. Then, they all descended towards Xiaoguang City. What do we get in? Do we need to register? The Farlight Academy accepts students from Xiaoguang City all year round. Although the conditions are high, it shouldn't be a problem for us. As soon as they entered Xiaoguang City, Yuan Shi, who had grasped the wind element, used his innate gift, which allowed him to hear voices even from 100 li away, to clearly hear some information. The Farlight Academy is a demonic academy. They accept students from a mortal realm to the demonic realm. It's not impossible for you to go, but you probably won't gain anything special. More importantly, we came here for the Little Star's trial. We shouldn't stay for long, right? The Golden Queen said with uncertainty. She even glanced at Yun Nuoxing. Don't look at me. I don't know either. I've never heard of this Ghostlight trial or seen it. I only know that there are 12 stages of the trial. The 7th stage is already more than halfway there. I don't know how long it will take, Yun Nuoxing muttered. Oh, the Farlight Academy has some relationship with the Light Temple. If they discover any students with the Light element, they will directly send them to the Light Temple. I also know the Dean. I don't know if we can get him to help, the Golden Queen muttered. It's shameful to go through the back door. It's not impossible for me to sign up. Yun Nuoxing waved her hand. But we aren't from Xiaoguang City. Yuan Shi laughed bitterly. Yun Nuoxing was startled. Her lips trembled a few times, and she rolled her eyes. I'll bring you there directly. After that, you can take the trial yourself. The Farlight Academy takes special care of the students of the 9-God Shrine. It shouldn't be a problem for them to recruit additional students. The Golden Queen raised her head and looked at the golden building in the distance. Her lily-white hand grabbed Yun Nuoxing's wrist without any explanation, causing him to be stunned. She then said to the Empress, "Take care of them first. I'll be back soon." After speaking, she didn't give Yun Nuoxing any time to react. She disappeared with a whoosh, leaving behind a group of dumbfounded people. After Xian came to her senses, she quickly rushed out. Her speed wasn't any slower than the Golden Queen's. Everyone smiled bitterly. This girl really didn't want to be separated for even a second. Chapter 603. The Golden Queen pulled Yin Nuoxing along as they leaped across the rooftops, flying at a low altitude. As Yin Nuoxing was being dragged along, he was also looking down. This Xiaoguang city was also very large. It had a vast area with distinct levels of buildings, as well as two huge academies built against the mountains. One of them was their destination, the Long Light Academy. This incomparably large city was very lively, especially as they approached the academy. They could see that there were many people below. The hundreds of streets were filled with people standing shoulder to shoulder. Most of these people were youths who looked to be around 15 or 16 years old, full of youthful energy. Of course, it was impossible to tell their exact age without touching their bones or waiting for them to say it themselves. For example, he and the Golden Queen. If one said he was 17 years old, people would believe it, but he turned out to be in his 30s or even an unknown age. There was also a woman who looked to be around 25 or 26 years old, but had already lived for tens of millions of years. Today is the day that the two academies are recruiting students. There's so many people that I feel a little dizzy. Yin Nuoxing's ears twitched as he listened to the vague and intermittent information below. He raised his head and looked at the Golden Queen in front of him. He could not help but say pitifully, "Don't throw me in, okay? There are so many people." The Golden Queen's cheeks trembled. She took a deep breath and tightened her grip on his hand. She steeled her heart and said, "No, your social anxiety is too serious. I think this is a good opportunity for you to mix around in the academy and interact with more people of the same age. Perhaps it will be cured." "Big Sister Jean, I don't want to go. Big Sister knows the dean. Just ask him to bring me to the trial of light. Why must I enter the academy?" Yin Nuoxing used UX Science's voice and said pitifully. The Golden Queen shuddered and almost let go of his hand. "Sayu." Princess Jean turned around helplessly and saw him staring at her with watery eyes, as if he was really going to cry. Her heart softened a little, but she still gritted her teeth and shook her head. She said helplessly, "Sister is doing this for your own good. Although it is because of your physique and hiding from the world to cultivate is the right path, but you can't always not see anyone. After you have lived for 1,000 years, or even 10,000 years, are you going to be alone forever? Although you have a lot of friends now, there are only about 20 of them. Do you know anyone else?" "No, I don't need any other friends. Xian Yuan, Shi, and the others are enough." Yin Nuoxing lowered her head and muttered. Then she raised her head again with a stubborn look on her face. "It's better to have one confidant than 3,000 friends. You?" The Golden Princess could not dissuade him. She sighed deeply and shook her head. "But I still want you to go. How about this? Consider this a mission for me. If you can persevere and know more than 10 people, then can I not accept it?" Yin Nuoxing's handsome face immediately collapsed. Before she could finish speaking, he had already interrupted her. Hearing this, Princess Jean also lost her temper. Why was this child so afraid of meeting people? Just like how the Golden Princess could not dissuade Yin Nuoxing could not persuade the Golden Princess. Seeing the academy rapidly approaching, he was also in despair. He sighed and muttered hesitantly, Just this once." She turned around and saw his gloomy and unhappy expression. The Golden Princess sighed and pulled him to her side. She rubbed his head and said, "Okay, I promise you. Just this once." There were two huge academies halfway up the mountain. The one on the left was resplendent, and even the buildings were golden. Naturally, it was the Longguang Academy. The one on the right was blue and was said to be the Remote Ocean Academy. It was the only competitor to the Longguang Academy. The Golden Princess brought Yin Nuoxing to the top of a building. Looking past the 3-story building, there was a huge square in front of them. Two huge bridges led to the academies on the left and right. Many young men and women stepped onto the bridges and walked towards the academies halfway up the mountain. From time to time, they would turn around to look at the people in the square. Their eyes were filled with pride and smiles, as if they were very proud of being able to enter these two academies. However, most of them stopped at the square and looked like they were being assessed. Many people lined up nervously, and there were also people who left dejectedly. It was obvious that they did not pass the preliminary assessment and were not qualified to enter the academy. Little Star. Not long after the two of them stopped, a hurried but calm voice called out to them from behind. This familiar voice made Yin Nuoxing's nose ache. This voice was as pleasant as the sound of an angel's horn. It made him see the light of dawn. It seemed that he did not need to stay in that terrifying environment alone. Turning around abruptly, Yin Nuoxing saw Xian standing gracefully in front of him. She was panting rapidly, and her voluptuous chest was heaving up and down. There was also a fragrant sweat on her face. She did not know how much energy she had used to catch up to the Golden Princess. She was about to collapse after flying over. Huff, huff. I really missed the feeling of Little Star flying with me. It turns out that flying by myself is so fast and so tiring. Xian panted and leaned forward into Yin Nuoxing's embrace. Hearing this, Yin Nuoxing laughed bitterly. The Golden Princess' speed was much faster than his light element. This girl was really too much. She must have used all her strength to catch up. Take a break. Yin Nuoxing reached out and patted her back with a smile. Xian? As expected, you came at the right time. I have a mission for you. The Golden Crown Princess also turned her head and saw that Xian had followed them. She was not surprised at all. She pointed at Yin Nuoxing and said softly, "Besides this test, you should supervise him and help him overcome his social phobia." Okay, Xian agreed without hesitation. She took out a hat from her ring and put it on. Then, she smiled at the Golden Princess. Yin Nuoxing also took out the Eternal Weapon half-mask and put on the right side of his face. The markings on the spiritual godly body were very bright and eye-catching. He was used to it being seen by Xian and the others. It was better to wear a mask when he came out. Moreover, he did not feel so nervous with the mask on. It seemed to be hinting to him that others were not looking at him. As for what the Golden Princess said to Xian, he did not comment. Little Star? Just as he put on the mask, a fiery red figure flew over from the horizon. Yin Nuoxing's eyes were filled with tears. The Golden Princess. Okay, you're here too. Fonger smiled faintly and transformed into her original form. However, it was only a small ball, only the size of a palm. Then, she burrowed into Yin Nuoxing's arms and peeked out from under his windbreaker. There was a touch of attachment in her beautiful eyes. She said softly, "I'll go wherever Little Star goes." Yin Nuoxing smiled and reached out to rub her little head. "Are you satisfied? There's no problem, right?" The Golden Princess's face twitched. After seeing him nod, she smiled bitterly and shook her head. She pointed at a man in a golden robe standing at the front and said, "See that man in the golden robe? You can go to his team for the test later. I've already arranged everything. Of course, I didn't give you any special treatment. I just gave you the qualifications to take the test. With your strength, you won't have a problem passing. Just don't cause the Longguang Academy to close down." Yin Nuoxing smiled bitterly. "How could that be go? We'll find a place to stay in the city. If there's anything, use the jade slip to call me. Even if it's in a sealed space, I'll know if you crush it. Be careful," the Golden Princess reminded. "Okay." Yin Nuoxing and Xian nodded. After saying a few more words, the Golden Princess left. Yin Nuoxing and Xian looked at each other and smiled. They habitually held each other's hands and jumped down from the roof. They stepped in the crowded public square and walked towards the Longguang Academy's recruitment area. There was already a long queue there. As the most prestigious academy in Xiaoguang City, the number of people who wanted to enter the Longguang Academy was undoubtedly the highest. Even people from the surrounding big cities would come here. Even if the remote Ocean Academy was the only competitor, they would not be able to compete with the Longguang Academy. The Red Star Academy was known to have the elimination line of hell. Those who could graduate from there were very few. Yin Nuoxing had lived there for a year and had seen many extremely talented people who could not graduate in the end. The Longguang Academy's elimination rate was also very high, but at least it was not as exaggerated and abnormal as the Red Star Academy. In the long queue, there were some youths laughing and discussing loudly. There were also some whispers that were trying to survive. The entire public square was as noisy as a market. Yin Nuashing and Xian quietly stood at the back of the queue. Although they were very low-key, their somewhat unique attire was also the highlight of this monotonous crowd. Moreover, their temperament could not be concealed. Therefore, just as the two of them stood firm, there were waves of whispers. Many people turned their heads and looked at the two people wearing masks and hats at the back of the queue. Their eyes were suffused with some other colors. Even if they could not see the beautiful face under the hat, many people were already indulging in fantasies. Just as Yin Nuashing and Xian were quietly waiting, a white figure appeared in front of the two of them. Raising his head, they saw that this person looked very young, about 23 or 24 years old. His clothes were as white as snow, and his eyebrows were slanted in between his eyebrows. He had a high-nose bridge and was exceptionally handsome. His entire person was like a sword that had been unsheathed, revealing a sharp sword intent. There was a bit of a serious taste, but also a cold temperament. After this person appeared, he quickly attracted the attention of the people nearby. Then, Yin Nuashing seemed to realize that the surrounding sounds had quietened down. She did not know if it was an illusion or not. Just arrived, the white-robed person calmly looked at Yin Nuashing and Xian, then looked at the mask and hat. His sharp gaze was like a long sword that pierced into Yin Nuashing's eyes. He coldly said, "Go over." After he finished speaking, he raised his chin towards the golden-clothed man at the front. After that, he turned around and left. The two men were baffled by his actions, but they didn't say anything. Yin Nuashing shrugged his shoulders and walked forward while holding Ziyan's hand. When they passed by this long line, Yin Nuashing clearly felt hundreds of pairs of eyes turn and stare at the two of them. She also heard many annoying whispers. Just arrived? Mask and hat. Can't they be seen in public? Sneaking around. One look, and I can tell that they are not good people. That woman is so beautiful. I can feel that she is very beautiful, even though I can't see her face. She don't talk so much. What if she is a divine son or a divine daughter of a big force? Just this sentence alone can offend people. But she is really beautiful. If I can, haha, then I can die without regrets. Shut up. Hearing the voice coming from the sea of people, Yin Nuashing could not help but swallow his saliva. His palms were sweating, and he was very nervous. However, the small hand in his palm was also squeezing his palm, as if it wanted to give him strength. Not long after, Yin Nuashing and the other two walked from the back to the front. The golden-robed man stood at the front like a statue with his hands behind his back. His eyes were indifferent as he watched the two of them arrive. Son of God. A soft voice sounded in their minds. Yin Nuashing and Xian were stunned. They raised their heads and looked at the golden-robed man. They seemed to understand something. Don't be nervous. My name is Jin Shun, and I am from the Golden Temple. The Great Elder arranged for me to receive the young Temple Master and Miss Xian. The golden-robed man looked to be about 30 years old. He had a square face, and even his eyes were golden. The expression on his face seemed to be frozen. Even the sound transmission was a bit stiff. It seemed that he had not spoken to anyone for a long time. Senior. Yin Nuashing and Xian cupped their hands. But even if they understood, they still had to put on a good show. The three of them looked calm and composed. Jin nodded stiffly. He looked forward and said indifferently, "You just arrived and did not hear what I said just now. I will repeat it again. The two academies have discussed this time. You will enter the 100,000 mountains behind the academy to hunt demonic and demonic beasts for a month. If you come out alive, you will be able to enter the academy. There will be additional rewards based on the spoils you bring out. You just have to wait here for a while." Jin Chun said indifferently. Then he said through sound transmission, "There is a hidden place in the 100,000 mountains. There is a colorful spring water that can cleanse the body and soul. If you're lucky, you can be reborn. It should be helpful to the young temple master and Miss Xian." Yin Nuashing and Xian were stunned. They looked at each other and then laughed in their hearts. Yin Nuashing could not help but say through sound transmission, "Elder, didn't Sister Jean say that she would not give me special treatment? Is that so? But the Great Elder only asked me to take good care of you. He did not say anything else." Jinshin smiled and said through sound transmission. The three of them could not help but laugh in their hearts. Chapter 604. The sun was setting in the west, and only when the sky began to turn yellow did the number of people in the vast square gradually dwindle. The preliminary examination had eliminated nearly 80% of the participants. Countless people left dejectedly, and those who remained gradually moved towards the entrance of the two great academies. Jinshin was talking to a few people in a low voice. From time to time, he would look at the mountain in the distance. After that, two of them flew towards the Farlight College. The rest of them stayed by Jinshin's side. They talked for a while before slowly leaving. At this time, in the square, the remaining people were all going to the 100,000 mountains for the trial. There were a total of 20,000 people, which was a very terrifying number. And this was the number that remained after nearly 80% of the people were eliminated. The remaining 20,000 people were already 1 in 100. Yin-Nuo Planet also found many people with decent strength, but there were still a few people who were at the Demon Realm. Among these 20,000 people, there were probably only 1,000 Demon Realm experts, and the rest were all at the Immortal Realm. Rank doesn't completely represent strength. If you want to prove your strength, you must overcome all kinds of dangers. Being born in this great world is your fortune, but also your misfortune. If you want to live, you must become stronger. Don't let others trample on you. This will be your first lesson in the Farlight Academy. Enjoy this feast. Jinshin suddenly let out a loud roar. His dead eyes seemed to have come back to life. His roar made the expressions of the youths turn solemn and their fighting spirits soar. They knew that only those who had truly experienced the baptism of blood could be called experts. Whoosh! In the sky not far away, a gust of wind blew. A row of flying demonic beasts flew towards the square. They paused for a moment. Then some people jumped on them and rushed towards a mountain. I think I saw the most beautiful girl in Xiaoguang City. She also came to participate. No, is she here to invigilate? Among the demonic beasts that stopped, one of them attracted a lot of attention. Those who exclaimed seemed to be the people of Xiaoguang City. Their words were clear and logical, as if they were very familiar with it. Jinshin also raised his head and glanced at the demonic beast, but it was just a casual glance. He then looked at the crowd and shouted, "Everyone, set off. Run forward. Everyone must enter the 100,000 mountains before the sun completely disappears. Go, go, go. For the future. For your lives. Shed your blood. Soul ignition." The passionate roar ignited a fire in the hearts of these inexperienced youths. The response of more than 20,000 people resounded through the sky, followed by a series of footsteps that shook the earth. It was as if there were thousands of soldiers and horses galloping. Everywhere they passed, a cloud of dust was raised. The passers-by, standing on the buildings, looked at these youthful figures with smiles on their faces. It was as if they were looking at themselves when they were young. "Young master, be careful on this trip. There are many powerful demonic beasts in the mountain area. The most powerful one should be a demigod-level demonic beast. Although it won't pose much of a threat to you, you still have to be extremely careful." When a cloud of dust drifted away, the square was quickly emptied, leaving only Yin Nuoxing and the other two. Jinshin was still transmitting his voice. Then he patted him on the shoulder and said in a low voice, "Young man, run." After he finished speaking, he pushed him out. Yin Nuoxing could feel that there seemed to be a breath left on his shoulder, as if it was guiding him. He laughed in his heart and nodded. Then, he held Xian's hand and ran toward the crowd. When the wave of 20,000 people approached the 100,000 mountains, it separated into two sides. The left side was still the Long Guang Academy, while the right side was the Serene Ocean Academy. However, there were clearly more people on the left side than on the right side. Their overall aura was also much stronger. "How many years has it been since I last ran? I've been flying all the time. I really want to fly." Yin Nuoxing, who was running at the back of the Long Guang Academy, said to Xian, who was beside him, "No, if you fly, you'll be too conspicuous. The only ones who can fly here are the invigilators and the old students. The new students haven't flown yet." Xian smiled. The two of them ran side by side. Their rainbow-colored and dark purple hair fluttered in the wind and intertwined from time to time. It was a very beautiful scene. Let's not fly. We can just pass by from the side. After all, we're about to enter the 100,000 mountain from the southern city gate. When we enter, we'll stagger and leave the group. We'll find that place, Yin transmitted. That rainbow-colored spring water, it can cleanse the body and soul. Is it useful to us? Xian asked curiously as he blinked at Mei Mao. I don't know, but it should be useful to you. Your tender skin should be cleansed. Yin Nuoxing pursed his lips. His body was already very strong. All sorts of divine items were constantly cleansing his body. However, since Jinshin had told him, it should still be useful. Before they even left the southern city gate, a dense forest had already appeared. However, they were still in Xiaoguang City and had yet to enter the 100,000 mountains. The passers-by and residents were stunned when they saw the two long groups rushing past like a whirlwind. After they left the city gate, they could already feel the desolate aura of the forest. The road that had been built had also become a mountain road. All sorts of rocks and branches were spread across the ground, trampled by countless feet. Continue forward. Burn, little universe. A month of training will pass in the blink of an eye. However, if you discover someone within 100 miles of the city gate within a month, you'll fail the test and won't be able to enter the academy. Now, for your future, charge forward with all your might. Jin Shun had appeared on the demonic beast in the sky at some point. He waved his hand and shouted at the crowd, igniting the atmosphere once again. Within 100 miles, there were almost no demonic beasts or demonic beasts. Even if there were, they were very weak. A few adults could deal with them. The danger was very low. Yin Nuoxing looked back at the flying demonic beast in the sky and whispered, "It's about time. Let's retreat." Xian nodded lightly. Then, the two stomped their feet on the ground and changed their route. They left the main road and rushed into the forest. As they were at the very back of the group, almost no one noticed them. Of course, other than Jin Shun, who had been paying attention to them. Young Hall Master, is he still unable to adapt to so many people? The Great Elder is really troublesome. After throwing the two of them into the academy, the trial of light can begin immediately after notifying the dean. It seems like it's going to be difficult to help the young Hall Master overcome his social phobia. Jin Shin laughed bitterly in his heart. Dazzling starlight descended. After the large group entered the 100,000 mountains, they scattered in twos and threes. With the help of the faint starlight, Yin Nuoxing and Xian flew quickly in the dark forest. With their strength, they could see the situation around them clearly even without the light of the fire. The aura that Elder Jinshin left on his shoulder also moved slightly at this moment and faintly pointed in a direction. The light elements surged, bringing Yin Nuoxing and Ziyin through the forest at high speed. The so-called distance of 100 miles had long been exceeded. In his perception, that aura was also faintly fluttering, as if it was getting closer. Let's rest for the night and continue the search the next morning. The forest at night is the world of the demonic beasts. We are very deep into the forest. Xian said softly as he squeezed his hands. The light elements were very fast. Even if they didn't use all their strength in just a few minutes, they had probably traveled more than 10,000 miles. They should have exceeded the area where they were required to stay for the assessment. Yes, that's good too. Yin Nuoxing nodded. The light elements slowly extinguished, and they slowly slowed down to a stop. Just as they stopped, the two of them stepped out of the forest. What they saw was a cliff that was at least 1,000 feet high. Standing at the edge and looking down, they could vaguely see some greenery. Even the tall trees seemed a little small. The towering ancient trees in the distance were also at least 1,000 feet tall. The bright and beautiful moonlight was like a thin veil that just happened to hang on the edge of the sky. There were no obstacles in the way. Sensing that Yin Nuoxing had stopped, Feng also jumped out of his windbreaker. Then, her small body shook, and the beautiful woman with a graceful figure appeared in front of them again. When the two of them saw her appear, they couldn't help but laugh. The three of them leaned against each other as they sat on the edge of the cliff. Yun Yaxing's heart was very calm. Although he had calmly accepted this so-called assessment to enter the Far Light Academy, his true goal was still to enter the Trial of Light. He wouldn't stay here forever. Elder Jean Chun obviously knew about this, so he might as well tell him about this place. Perhaps he knew that this place was far away from the assessment area, so he told him about it. Xian and Feng didn't cultivate or sleep. They only held Yun Yaxing's hand tightly and looked at the moon together peacefully. The three of them cherished the peaceful time they had now. One day in the future, they might not be able to experience it again. Before that day came, they had to cherish the present. At dawn the next day, the students in the mountains woke up one after another and went on their way. Some students seemed to have stayed up all night and had been rushing through the forest. When Yun Yaxing and the other two saw the sun rise from the east, they felt some auras approaching from behind. Although they were still far away, they would come into contact in less than 5 minutes. Could it be that we haven't gone beyond the scope of the ordinary assessment? Yun Yaxing scratched his head in confusion and turned to look at Feng and Xian. The two of them shrugged cutely and didn't say anything. Feng turned into a small ball and burrowed into his windbreaker. Xian held his hand. Yun Yaxing sighed and pushed the ground with his right hand. The two of them directly fell down the cliff. About an hour later, Yun Yaxing, who was jumping rapidly, suddenly trembled and stopped. Xian was startled, but he quickly stopped. He pulled Yun Yaxing's arm and turned around to let himself fall into Yun Yaxing's embrace. Then he raised his head and blinked at Mei Mao. "What's wrong?" Yun Yaxing nodded. He sniffed and looked to the side. "I smell a very fragrant smell. It should be some kind of fruit." After he finished speaking, he hugged Xian a little tighter. Light elements flickered and the two of them disappeared on the spot. They quickly rushed toward the place where he smelled the fragrance. Not long after, they arrived at a valley. The valley in front of them wasn't very spacious. The surrounding towering trees completely covered the area. Rocks as sharp as blades were placed in front of the mountain pass. This place was very hidden. If one didn't pass through the numerous trees, they wouldn't be able to find this place from the sky. Standing at the entrance of the valley and taking a look, Yin Nuoxing didn't hesitate too much. He stomped on the ground and rushed straight into the valley. Feng, who was hiding in his chest, also stuck out her small head. She raised her head and let out a cry. A wave of aura slowly spread out, intimidating the magical beasts inside. After venturing deep into the mountain valley for a long distance, Yun Nuoxing sniffled again. Then he slowly came to a stop. His nose could not help but twitch. He raised his head and saw that at the top of the mountain wall on the left, there was a very sudden crack on the brown mountain body. It was about 20 feet long, and within that crack, a 30-feet-tall tree extended out from the crack. Its drooping branches continuously swayed with the wind in the mountain valley. This small tree was completely white, as if it was made from jade. Among the densely packed emerald green leaves on the small tree, one could faintly see a red color that was hidden. It was a perfectly round fruit that was the size of a fist. Even from such a great distance away, one could still smell the delicate fragrance that was emitted from it, causing one's heart to feel relaxed and happy. Fire essence fruit. This is a jade fire tree. It smells so good. Yin Nuoxing took a deep breath of the fragrance. After counting carefully, there were more than 20 fire essence fruits on the jade fire tree. They swayed gently in the wind, as if tempting him. That's strange. This cliff is 100 feet tall. How did that tree grow on it? Xian tilted his head and looked at the jade fire tree that stretched out from the mountain. Mei Mao was a little puzzled. "Oh, I don't know either. Who cares? Anyway, this isn't an illusion. The magical beasts nearby have been scared away by foam." Yin Nuoxing smiled. The fire essence fruit contained extremely rich fire elemental energy. It could also nourish the energy in the body. The rich fire elemental energy could stimulate and refine the energy hidden in every corner of the body. This made him a little tempted. Without saying anything, Yin Nuoxing jumped up with Xian in his arms and stopped beside the jade fire tree. He looked at the jade fire tree that grew horizontally and then at the fire essence fruits hanging down. The corners of his mouth curved into a happy smile. With a wave of his hand, he plucked the more than 20 fire essence fruits. He then took out a good jade box and placed them inside. He took out 2 fruits and threw one to Xian. The fire essence fruit can refine the body. The energy hidden in the body will be stimulated. If a person who has eaten a heaven and earth treasure eats the fire essence fruit, the effect of the heaven and earth treasure will be maximized, Yin Nuashing said with a smile. He also took a bite of the fire essence fruit in his hand. It melted in his mouth, and he felt a blazing energy rush into his body. It integrated into his limbs and bones, igniting the star energy in his body. All the pores on his body were stimulated by this blazing energy. It made him feel so comfortable that he couldn't help but want to moan. I found it first, just as Yin Nuashing was sensing the energy in his body. A timid voice suddenly sounded not far away, causing him to be stunned. He raised his head to look at the cliff, only to see a 15 or 16-year-old youth looking at him nervously. Those beautiful eyes seemed to contain spiritual energy, and there was a rope wrapped around his body. Chapter 605. The young man who suddenly appeared was thin and short. He was dressed in a yellow robe and looked very young. His beautiful eyes fluttered weakly, and his hands that were holding the rope were trembling. He had a feminine temperament, and his eyes were filled with fear and unwillingness as he stared at Yin Nuashing. The moment the yellow-clothed young man appeared, he looked at Yin Nuashing with fear. Yin Nuashing was puzzled. Did he look so scary? You said that you found it first, so why didn't you take it? Yin Nuashing waved the fire essence fruit in her hand, then took a bite without hesitation. A scorching breath exhaled from her nostrils. Hearing Yin Nuashing's sudden words, the young man was so shocked that he hurriedly took 2 steps back. He shrank his head and said in a trembling and low voice, I found this fire jade tree 2 months ago, but flying is forbidden here, and there are demonic beasts guarding it. Today, I wanted to try hanging down with a rope to take it. Hearing this, Yin Nuashing and Xian looked at each other in astonishment. If they couldn't fly, then it's the power of space. I can now use the power of space to step on space as if it's flat ground. I don't need to rely on the wind element to fly. There's probably a restriction on the wind element here. Yin Nuashing suddenly understood and transmitted her voice to Xian. Hearing this, Xian tried to mobilize the wind element. Sure enough, she found that the wind element couldn't be condensed. She also understood why the young man was so nervous. The 2 of them were standing in the void, so he probably thought that he had seen some powerful expert. This young man's cultivation was only around the 6th level of the immortal realm. He was very brave to dare to enter the 100,000 mountains alone. Little star, give him some, Xian whispered in her ear. Yes, that's fine. Yin Nuashing smiled. She leaped with her and landed on the top of the mountain. The young man was so frightened that he hurriedly retreated and sat on the ground. He looked at the 2 of them in horror and was about to cry. This guy is only 18 years old, but he's already at the 6th level of the immortal realm. His talent is also frightening. Yin Nuashing muttered in her heart. Hey, what's your name? Yin Nuashing took 2 steps forward and took another bite of the fire essence fruit in her hand. Then, she threw the whole fruit into her mouth and licked the juice on her hand as she asked softly, Who? How? I'm a student of the Far Academy. The young man was so frightened that he took a few steps back and threw the rope to the side, his little face full of fear. How, right? A student of the Far Academy. Yin Nuashing couldn't help but laugh when she saw the young man's frightened appearance. She waved her hand and took out the jade box that contained the fire essence fruits. She opened it and took out 6 fruits, sealing them in another jade box. You're at the 6th level of the immortal realm. You don't need too many fire essence fruits. This thing's effect will begin to weaken after eating it 3 times. When you feel like you're about to break through, or when you eat some heavenly treasure, you can eat one. Yin Nuashing explained and handed the box to Hu Hao. Seeing him walk over, Hu Hao jumped in fright and hurriedly closed his eyes. But after hearing his words, he was stunned again and hurriedly opened his eyes. Seeing Yin Nuashing handing over a jade box, he carefully asked, For me? Yes, there are 6 fire essence fruits inside. Yin Nuashing nodded with a smile, then joked, "You could have picked more than 20 fire essence fruits or been torn to pieces by the demonic beasts here. But who told us to beat you to it? Just take it as the fee for opening the way for you." Hearing Yin Nuashing's calculation, Xian couldn't help but smile bitterly. Hu Hao looked at him in horror. His beautiful big eyes blinked and stared for a long time before he took the jade box. Then, he pulled Yin Nuashing's hand and stood up from the ground. He glanced at Yin Nuashing and then at Xian. His young eyes were filled with amazement, and he was stunned. After a long time, he heard Xian's chuckle and quickly came back to his senses. His little face blushed, and he held the jade box tightly with both hands. He bowed deeply to the two of them and said timidly, Thank you." After he finished speaking, his face was as red as an apple. He quickly turned around and ran down the mountain without looking back. This kid, am I that scary? Seeing him run away, Yin Nuashing couldn't help but touch her face and smile bitterly. She wasn't worried about anything. Since Hu Hao could come here with the cultivation of the 6th level of the immortal realm, it shouldn't be a problem for him to go back. Well, he looks quite cute, but he's a little mischievous. He stared at you for a long time and couldn't even move his eyes. Yin Nuashing spread her hands, turned around, and smiled at Xian. Are you jealous? Little Star sometimes stares at me and for a long time without moving. Hearing this, Xian covered his mouth and giggled. His Mei Mao eyes were filled with a sly look. Cough. Nonsense. I didn't stare at you for a long time. It was only for a dozen seconds. Being exposed, Yin Nuashing's face turned red. He hurriedly tried to explain, but he realized that the more he tried to explain, the more he made things worse. Seeing that she was smiling so brightly that even the sunlight paled in comparison, he quickly coughed again and said, Let's go and find the place that Elder Jean Chun mentioned. Naughty little rascal, you don't want to admit it. Xian giggled again, and her hands naturally wrapped around his arm. Cough. Yin Nuashing's heart surged when her soft body clung tightly to his arm. He coughed heavily, and his face was even redder than Hu Hao's. He hurriedly told her that everything was fine in his heart, and then flew into the distance with her in his arms. In the black forest, the thunderous roars of beasts could be heard. The strong pressure blew the forest to the side. In the depths of the forest, huge trees were snapped in half, or cut in half by invisible blades. The heavy sound of the huge trees falling to the ground echoed throughout the forest. 2 silhouettes flashed rapidly in the collapsed forest. Sparks of energy exploded in midair, and the aftermath of the explosion spread in all directions, cutting down many of the surrounding towering trees. Black leaves rustled and scattered all over the sky and were blown far away by the gusts of wind. Among the 2 figures, there was a huge flying bird that was at least 1,000 feet long. Its body was covered with pale white wings, and when it flew across the sky, one could only see a white flash of lightning. The other figure was a young human girl. She was dressed in a purple robe, and her dark purple hair fluttered like flowing clouds. Hold its head down and cut off its comb. It will lose its strength. Don't get scratched by its wings. Below its abdomen, between its wings. In the distance, there was a young man in black who quickly followed the 2 and kept reminding them. From what he said, it was obvious that he was reminding the girl. Be careful of the wind blades. Even a 9th seal of the demon rank would be cut in half at the waist. One touch, and it would be over. In midair, there were many afterimages of the huge flying bird and the girl. The 2 of them were extremely fast. Just by passing by the side of the trees were almost broken. The young man's eyes flashed with a colorful light. In his eyes, he could actually clearly see the 2 figures that were flying past. In the air, heavy and muffled sounds rang out. Yin Nuashing calmly turned his gaze. The 2 extremely fast figures were extremely clear in his eyes. The powerful effects of the evil spirit eyes had caused him to be both pleasantly surprised and shocked. Up till now, he had borrowed the convenience of his eyes in many aspects, and in the current battle, he was able to clearly see the extremely fast movements. The coxcomb windplume bird is very fast. Even a demigod might not be able to catch up with a demigod coxcomb windplume bird. Isn't it a bit too much for the purple word devil 3 to challenge a demigod coxcomb windplume bird? On Yun Nuashing's chest, Fenger stuck her head out and looked at the huge bird and the girl that were flying at high speed in the distance. I'll lend her the light element. Before it runs out, her speed won't be a problem. Moreover, it was the girl herself who asked to train in the forest. I don't want to discourage her. During this period of time, I don't know how many magical beasts of the demon rank and above have been defeated. In the beginning, she was unfamiliar with her methods, but now she can handle them with ease. The level of the challenge has also increased from the demon rank to the demigod rank. Let's just trust her, Yin Nuashing said softly. His eyes followed the two closely. The worry in his eyes was clearly more real than his understatement. He added, and we are watching. Rumble. As the battle in the sky became increasingly intense, an aura suddenly swelled, causing Yun Nuashing to be startled. He hurriedly lifted his head, and his expression became a little grave. Dark clouds swept over in the sky, and a pale white light shot out. A huge pale white bird that was tens of thousands of feet in size appeared under the sky and covered the sun. Waves of frightening demonic aura poured out in a manner that could topple mountains and overturn seas. He's going all out. It is not that easy to kill a demigod rank magical beast. Looking at the huge creature in the sky, Yin Nuashing's expression became a little grave. The feathers of the demigod wind featherbird were as hard as steel. The body of a demigod demon sovereign could be used as a demigod weapon. Even an expert who had just stepped into the demigod rank might not be able to crush it. Boom! The coxcomb wind featherbird's wings that were thousands of feet in size covered the sky. With a sudden flap, the sky seemed to darken in an instant. The huge figure tore through space at an extremely terrifying speed. Even the sound of the sonic boom could not catch up with it. Under this flap of the wings, half of the ancient trees that towered into the sky flew into the distance, and the forest was destroyed into a mess. Within his pitch-black eyes, a blurry, enormous being tore through the sky like a lightning bolt. Even though there was a great distance between them, the frightening wind pressure had already arrived. The turbulent airflow was just like sharp wind blades as it violently swept past Zian's body, causing his clothes to be pressed against his body, revealing his curves that would cause people to go crazy. Zian's pretty face was grave. The bright golden particles around her body had also thinned out. Seeing this, she could not help but take a deep breath. Her hands quickly formed a seal, and a huge five-colored magic circle appeared quickly behind her body. Then, a huge long sword appeared in the center of the magic circle. Her delicate hand grasped the sword with great force. If one looked closely, this huge five-colored long sword was actually the same as the Netherworld Ruin Sword. Wait a minute, is this girl going to take it head-on? Seeing Zian's posture, Yun Nuashing was stunned. When she came to her senses and hurriedly stood up from the tree, the pale figure had already rushed to Zian's side. Holding the huge long sword, she twisted her body and rushed towards the wind featherbird. Yun Nuashing's face turned pale with fright. She could not care less about her training. Light elements gathered and exploded in an instant, wrapping her up and rushing towards the battlefield. However, no matter how fast she was, Zian and the wind featherbird were only a matter of seconds. Even Yun Nuashing, who had the fastest speed in the world, could not catch up with the wind featherbird. The two figures, who were disproportionate in size, clashed with each other at lightning speed and brushed past each other. Yun Nuashing also rushed to the battlefield as soon as they brushed past each other. She hurriedly held onto Zian, who had lost control of her body, and then turned around abruptly. She unleashed her star force. Just as she was about to make a move, she was shocked to see the wind featherbird's huge body falling into the forest far away. Under its belly, there was a huge, colorful sword. Blood gushed out like a waterfall. Every drop of blood on the ground was enough to fill up a pond. Seeing that the wind featherbird had almost been killed in one strike, Yun Nuashing was also stunned. She hurriedly lowered her head. Xian's face was pale, and there was a trace of blood at the corner of her mouth. Even her purple robe had been cut by the sharp wind blades, revealing her naked body. However, Yin did not have time to enjoy the view, because fine bloodlines had appeared on her exposed skin. Both of them were injured. She used up all her strength and fainted. Yin blinked. Looking at the girl who had fainted without any worry, she could not help but smile bitterly. Was he too worried? Maybe he was still used to seeing her as an ordinary girl. Silly girl. Chuckling, Yin gently stroked her head. Wisps of wood element gushed out, making the place full of vitality. Chapter 606. In the depths of the black forest, multicolored light seemed to gush out from the ground, dyeing the surrounding trees with a blurry luster. The branches, leaves all showed multicolored spots of light, and even the clouds in the sky were dyed with a bit of color. This place was as beautiful as a dream. Her line of sight turned a few times to look at the place where the light was shining, and she was surprised to find that it was a multicolored lake. However, calling it a lake was a little too big. This lake was surrounded by layers of trees, and it was less than 10 feet in diameter. A huge stone stood quietly in the middle of the lake. There was no source, and there was no place for circulation. It was like a pool of stagnant water. Even the trees growing on the shore had shed their black color and grown into a multicolored color. Found it. In a multicolored forest, a black figure slowly approached, shuttling between the thick trees. After a while, he jumped out of the forest. When he saw the multicolored lake, he couldn't help but raise his eyebrows and smile faintly. He lowered his head to look at the girl who was still in his arms and said softly, "Girl, we're here. Since you're awake, get up." "How did you know I was awake?" Xian, whose beautiful eyes were tightly closed, opened her eyes wide in astonishment. When she met the multicolored eyes, she tilted her head in confusion. Spiritual power is stable, and there are no fluctuations or stillness. How can I not see that? Do you think I'm stupid? Yin rolled his eyes and said, "We've arrived at the place that Elder Jinshun said. You go first. I'll check for you. Also, change your clothes while you're at it." When Xian heard this, she lowered her head to look at the somewhat tattered purple clothes on her body. She couldn't help but blush. When she raised her head again, she saw that he was looking straight ahead. She couldn't help but giggle and jump out of his arms. She smiled slyly and said, "You're not allowed to peek." "Who would peek?" Yin blushed and glared at her fiercely. However, his blushing face and pretending to be fierce looked a little funny. "All right, bring this with you. Use it inside. It'll be more effective when used together." As soon as Xian turned around, he heard a voice behind him. He turned around and saw a blurry object flying toward him. He reached out and caught it. At the same time, he smelled a very tempting flower fragrance and seemed to see a divine moon in the sky. Lying in the palm of his hand was a soft blue and white flower made up of simple leaves. However, the flower at the top was a miniature qilin. There was also a crescent moon facing upwards. The alluring fragrance and rich spiritual energy made Xian feel a little lightheaded just by taking a whiff. Her jade-like hand lightly touched the qilin and crescent moon above her head. She raised her head and asked Yun Nuashing, "This is?" The moon of the qilin, a divine item among flowers. Consuming it will allow one to be reborn and absorb the light of the moon. It has an yin attribute and is more suitable for women. If a virgin consumes it, the full effects of the moon of the qilin will be unleashed. Yin Nuashing looked at the blue and white leaves. He thought for a moment and added, "Xianin left it behind. I only discovered it not long ago. She placed more than 3,000 restrictions in these 2 rings. I can only remove them when I'm strong enough. Not long ago, when I came out of the ice fields, I accidentally saw this moon of the qilin and some other divine flowers." Xian blinked at the Mei Mao and lowered her head to caress the divine flower. There was a gentle look on her face. "Sister Xian, Yin left it for you. Is it really okay for me to consume it?" "Yes, it's suitable for you. There are other divine herbs in the ring. Don't worry about it." Yin Nuashing nodded and sighed. he said faintly. As far as I know, this flower isn't among the 360 divine treasures recorded on the Heaven and Earth treasure ranking. With its effects, it's definitely not impossible for it to be ranked. Could it be that not many people discovered it, so it wasn't listed on the ranking? Or is there another way to record the divine flower? Zian said softly. Oh, that's possible. Let's not think so much. Hurry up and go. Just drink it in one mouthful. Don't leave the leaves behind. Eat a fire essence fruit while you're at it. Yin Nuoxing shook his head and looked at her with a smile. Yin Nuoxing watched her walk into the colorful pond and was covered by the dense energy mist. Only then did he turn around. When he heard the sound of someone falling into the water, he let out a sigh of relief. The Rainbow Aurora Celestial Pond. Legend has it that the water in the pond was born under the influence of the starry sky. It can allow those who cultivate in the pond to be reborn. It has something to do with reincarnation and cultivation. However, only the first person who steps in has a small chance. If someone really succeeds in their reincarnation, the effects of the pond water will weaken a lot. Looking at the state of the pond water now, it seems to have that effect. Feng Er appeared at the side and looked at Yun Nuoxing. Aya, you should have said so earlier. Then I would have. Yin Nuoxing was stunned. Suddenly, he slapped his head and shook his head in annoyance. You're bullying Zian because she doesn't know about this. You gave the opportunity to her. If she knew about this pond water, she would have given it to you. Seeing his pretentious look, Feng Er couldn't help but roll her eyes at him and cut him off. Life is hard. Don't expose me. Yin Nuoxing spread his hands. Seeing that she was still staring at him, he couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. He flipped his right hand and took out a red object. Then, he suddenly slapped it towards Feng Er's sexy red lips. Feng Er was startled by this swift action. Before she could react, Yin Nuoxing's big hand, which was holding the red object, slapped her red lips. She only felt something cold and hot enter her mouth. Because she was frightened, she swallowed it without thinking. That red object melted like ice and turned into a huge stream of heat that quickly flowed through her body. Seeing Feng Er's slender neck move, Yin Nuoxing smiled and let go of his hand. Feng Er also quickly coughed twice. Mei Mao looked at him innocently and said, Cough, cough. It's not the fire essence fruit. Xing, what did you feed me? Immortal Phoenix fruit. It's a divine item on the same level as the Moon of Qilin. It can purify fire-related energy and even increase one's ability to control fire. However, one is a fruit while the other is a flower. All right, you can go in too. Here's a fire essence fruit. Eat one too. Yin Nuoxing smiled and pushed her inside. When they walked, he stuffed another fruit into Feng Er's mouth. Before they walked into the energy mist, he saw her looking at him with hidden bitterness. Seeing that both of them had entered, Yin Nuoxing shrugged his shoulders. His right hand gently stroked the ring on his left middle finger, and his consciousness seeped into it. After looking for a while, he could not help but be speechless. In this area where divine objects were placed, there were dozens of divine objects of this kind. Immortal herbs, immortal fruits, divine flowers, all of them emitted a strange energy. The rich fragrance that could not be dispersed and tangled together, causing him to sneeze loudly. This is only the outermost area of the 3,000 layers of restrictions. However, the storage space in this ring is really big. I'm afraid it can hold a city. Yin Nuoxing rubbed his nose. He didn't notice the restriction on this ring at first. Not long ago, when he was wandering inside the ring, he saw a piece of paper left at the edge. It was obviously Xian Yin's masterpiece. However, the 6 paths of reincarnation technique wasn't sealed in the restriction back then. Perhaps there are some dangerous items that can't be touched if one's level isn't high enough. Yin Nuoxing smiled bitterly and shook his head. Xing, come down. There's a stone in the pool that separates the left and the right. I've set up a barrier. Zian and I will be on the left. You go to the right. When Yin Nuoxing's mind wandered inside the space in the ring, a soft voice echoed in his mind. He was stunned for a moment and withdrew his consciousness from the ring. After he recognized the voice and its contents, he couldn't help but smile bitterly. He nodded casually and walked towards the thick mist. After entering the energy mist, he walked for a while and arrived at the shore of the pool. He could indeed see a huge stone that was a few zhang wide. It took up more than half of the entire pool. On the left, there was a very obvious red and pink energy barrier. It covered the situation inside and also blocked out the sound inside. However, when he saw two sets of familiar clothes hanging on the tree by the shore, Yun Nuoxing's head exploded. His handsome face quickly turned red, and he couldn't help but curse. These two girls, they're cultivating and they're taking off their clothes? Out of sight, out of mind. Everything is fine. Yun Nuoxing quickly looked away and patted his chest. He muttered a few words and then smiled bitterly and jumped into the celestial pool on the right. Splash! In an instant, the celestial pool soaked his clothes. The water in the celestial pool wasn't cold. It had a strange warmth. The surging energy made Yun Nuoxing feel warm all over. It was as if he had jumped into a hot spring. It was indescribably comfortable. The water in the celestial pool entered his body through his pores and turned into a warm current that surged through his body. It merged into his limbs and bones. The energy in the celestial pool wasn't used to increase one's cultivation. Therefore, he didn't have too many concerns and allowed this warm energy to flow into his body. Suddenly, a colorful energy surged into his body and wrapped around him like a thin film. He was stunned. Before he could take a closer look at what this thin film was for, his soul was wrapped up by that thin film and then dragged out of his body. Yun Nuoxing's expression changed drastically. He just floated quietly to the side and watched his soulless body lean against the huge rock. He was so scared that his handsome face turned pale. His brain was spinning rapidly as he thought about what to do. However, what happened next shocked him even more. His soulless body was suddenly submerged by the colorful water in the celestial pool. A huge ball of water lifted him out of the water and placed him on the shore. In the next moment, Yun Nuoxing saw his body, his limbs, and his bones all burst apart in an instant and exploded into pieces. Even his spiritual body was shocked and unsettled. My body, what was going on? He had only heard of the seven-colored aurora celestial pond, which had the effect of being reborn. However, what was going on here? His soul had been directly ripped out, and his body had been shattered. This wasn't being reborn. This was destroying his body. Don't worry. Wait. You'll know in a while. Just as he was feeling anxious, Zia's soft laughter rang out in his mind, startling him. He hurriedly took a deep breath and calmed himself down. Z couldn't just watch him become a wandering ghost without a body. Although he was a little relieved, he still looked nervously at the body that had been blown to pieces. After all, that was his body, and it had been blown to pieces so abruptly. Following that, Yun Nuoxing saw the various organs and bones in his body shattering inch by inch. It was as if he was walking towards destruction step by step. Even the top of his head had been blown off. He was so frightened that he hurriedly closed his eyes and turned his head. Fortunately, his soul had left his body. If he were to experience such changes in his body, he would probably faint from the pain. After 5 minutes, his body had completely shattered into pieces. Half of his golden red blood flowed to the side and was wrapped in the colorful liquid. Not a single drop fell to the ground. However, the ground beside him was filled with broken bones or bone powder. They had all been reduced to powder. However, his 20 feet long hair was glowing faintly and didn't break apart. Then, it was also wrapped in the celestial pool's liquid and thrown to the side. Obliterate the old body. Next, it's time to witness a miracle. As soon as Zia's soft laughter fell, Yun Nuoxing discovered that something was different. An extremely powerful vitality appeared, causing the trees on both sides to sway. The pile of golden red blood mixed with the celestial pool's water, as if it was being transformed by the celestial pool and replaced with new blood. An illusory body gradually appeared. Its organs, bones, and body were all being reconstructed. When Yun Nuoxing wanted to personally witness the process of the body's reconstruction, a suction force sucked his soul over and threw him into the blurry figure. He could feel an itch all over his body, as if life was being reborn. After an unknown amount of time, Yin Nuoxing suddenly opened his eyes. A huge beam of energy shot out from his eyes, creating a violent whistling sound in the air. He quickly lowered his head and stretched out his hands. When he saw that his body was complete, without any missing parts, he finally let out a long sigh of relief. At this moment, he was sitting cross-legged in the celestial pool. There was a handful of colorful hair lying quietly on the shore. The patterns on the body were still the same, without any changes. However, when he saw his own body, his expression became a little strange. But after a while, he relaxed. He was already used to it. So domineering. Fortunately, my soul left my body. If I personally experienced this rebirth, I'm afraid I would die from the pain. Yin Nuoxing let out a long sigh. Then, his expression slowly became conflicted. This didn't seem right. He didn't deliberately change his voice, but wasn't this voice Yusin's? No. It was softer and more tender than Yusin's. Yes, it was a girl's voice, sensing that something was wrong. Yin Nuoxing swallowed with difficulty. The divine light mirror appeared in his hand and shone inside. Ah! A high-decibel scream resounded through the entire forest. Chapter 607. No. Why? It can't be changed in this direction. Yin Nuoxing's handsome face was pale as he screamed involuntarily. That sharp voice, that extremely high pitch, did not have any sense of heaviness and did not deliberately change the tone of his voice. That voice was just like the voice of a young girl. A young face appeared in the divine light mirror. She had a delicate head and eyebrows, and her skin was smooth and creamy. She was exceedingly beautiful, and her big eyes were beautiful and moving. Her eyes flickered with the colors of the stars, and her colorful hair hung down her cheeks. That bright and flowing color, coupled with her moving face, instantly caused all the colors in the world to converge on her. However, this stunning little face had her mouth wide open in shock. She looked like she was in disbelief and despair. Yin Nuoxing was on the verge of breaking down. Her initial appearance was already very similar to a girl's, and her current appearance was even more excessive. She looked like she was at most 13 or 14 years old. She was delicate, and her slender eyebrows were filled with spiritual energy. It was as if she was born from the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Her eyes were as bright as the stars, and a slight glance was enough to make everyone fall in love with her. A glance could cause the downfall of a city, and a second glance could cause the downfall of a country. I don't need any rejuvenation. I'm already young enough. Yin Nuoxing was so angry that he screamed. His voice was distorted and became extremely sharp. He suddenly threw the divine light mirror into the pool, causing a splash of water that was dozens of feet high. He sat there panting for breath for a while. He was a little absent-minded. He was so absent-minded that his mind was blank. He did not want to think about anything. After a while, when the pool water splashed down on his face, he slowly walked over and picked up the divine light mirror that he had thrown into the ground. He looked inside again. The snow flame facial skin has lost its effect. The patterns are exposed. Fortunately, the seal of primal chaos has disappeared. When he saw the colorful patterns on his face, Yin Nuoxing felt that his world was about to collapse. His connection with the snow flame facial skin had been broken. Furthermore, when he took it out from the pendant and applied it to his face again, there was no new connection. This made him realize that the high-quality snow flame facial skin was no longer useful. Am I supposed to go out with this face? Yin Nuoxing smiled bitterly and looked back. The crimson-pink barrier was still there. Xian and Foam hadn't been alerted even after such a big commotion. They might not be done yet. He knew that many people were looking for this kind of thing, especially those old monsters who were nearing the end of their lifespans. However, he was young and had no use for this kind of thing. If not for the fact that he could feel that his body had become stronger by more than one level, he would definitely have cursed it out loud. Do you think it's just a matter of being reborn, turning back your age, and changing your appearance? Seeing him instantly relax, Z couldn't help but sneer, causing him to be stunned. Could it be that there are other uses? Yin Nuoxing asked in a daze. Her face twitched when she heard the girl's voice. Your life source is expanded by at least 3 times. In other words, your original lifespan has been extended by more than 3 times. Moreover, if you advance to the divine level in the future, this effect will continue. Zi said softly and then suddenly laughed out loud. Moreover, the energy of the 7-colored aurora celestial pond will continue to improve your body. In this case, if I tell you good news, it will continue to transform you into a girl. Just kill me. I don't want to live anymore. Yin Nuoxing was so angry that tears streamed down her face. She was such a good young man, but she was forced to have a girl's face. I think it's quite beautiful. Whether it's Brother Nuoxing or Sister Xian, they're all very beautiful. Lan Xian covered her mouth and chuckled. Hearing this, Yin Nuoxing only felt that her life was meaningless. When she looked at herself in the mirror for the 3rd time, she couldn't help but sigh. Even the original outline was almost invisible, leaving less than 10% of the original traces. Her cheeks were as exquisite as jade, white and smooth, making people want to caress them. They were so smooth that they could be used as a mirror. Especially those eyes, those beautiful eyes with the deepest colors of the star domain. But they didn't look deep at all. Even if she made a fierce expression, she looked watery, with a hint of slyness and eccentricity, just like when you was being naughty. I don't want to live anymore. There was another high-decibel explosion, along with a loud sound of falling into the water, splashing up a few hundred feet high. Yin Nuoxing collapsed and sat on the shore, holding the divine mirror of light. She made a fierce expression, an arrogant expression, a murderous expression, an evil expression, and a deep expression, but in the end, she was acting cute and coquettish. Seeing this, she almost vomited blood. Damn it, she was too cute. After searching through the pile of broken bones for a while, he found the soul-stabilizing bracelet and put it on. He looked back at his long hair and let out a long sigh. He put the soul-stabilizing bracelet on his long hair. His soft and smooth hair instantly shrank back to his thighs. He looked at himself in the mirror one last time and blinked his eyes. The watery eyes in the mirror also blinked back at him, as bright as the stars in the sky. F***CKU beep. With a rumble, the celestial pond was lifted into the air for the 3rd time. It had to be said that her strength at this moment was indeed a lot stronger. Little star, what's wrong? An ethereal and pleasant voice came from not far away, causing her to tremble all over. She was finished. If Xian and the others saw her like this, they would laugh to death. He turned his head abruptly and saw 2 slender figures walking out from the side of the celestial pool. They were even using towels to continuously wipe their long and smooth hair that reached their thighs. When he looked closely, Yin Nuoxing was also dumbfounded. Xian and Feng had also changed a lot. The 2 of them were already devastatingly beautiful, and now that they had been reborn in the celestial pond, they were even more charming. Their bodies exuded a holy aura, and their slender arms, which were not covered by their robes, were sparkling and translucent, as white and flawless as ice crystals. Her skin was as white as snow, her eyebrows were frowning, and her eyes were like ripples in the autumn water. Just a glance at them was enough to make her heart flutter. The change in the 2 women was more in their temperament. Their ethereal temperament and appearance made him feel a little moved. It's over, it's over. These 2 girls can't even hold back Little Star. In the future, they will be together for trillions or even hundreds of billions of years. It's only a matter of time before they fall for each other. Z also saw the 2 through her gaze. Even she was moved, and even the self-proclaimed ice heart Yin Nuoxing might not be able to hold back. Her mind was in turmoil for a while. When Xian and Feng walked in front of her, only then did Yin Nuoxing feel that their auras had changed a lot. Xian had just become a rank 3 demon master, but now she already had the strength of a rank 3 demon master. Her strength had increased by 8 small realms, and Feng had rushed from the Divine King realm to the Divine Emperor realm. The increase in strength was many times more terrifying than Xian's. The immortal phoenix fruit is related to the phoenix. Together with the fire essence fruit and the celestial pond, it's normal for one to jump a large realm from the initial god realm. Little Xian's condition is also normal. Zi looked at the two in surprise for a while, then smiled. Yin Nuoxing's cheeks twitched for a while. She stared at the two girls without blinking. When they came closer, she was about to say something, but she heard Xian chuckling. "Little girl, have you seen a person in black clothes with long, colorful hair?" Her limpid eyes blinked. Yin Nuoxing looked at her in surprise, and she almost spat out blood. Ziyi, in the spiritual world, was laughing so hard that he knocked on the table. Lan Xen also couldn't help but laugh. This girl had changed so much that even Xian couldn't recognize her. Seeing that the little girl's expression was not quite right, and her face was sometimes bright and sometimes dark, Xian also felt a little strange. He and Feng looked at each other for a while, then turned their heads and looked at this white-haired girl again. Suddenly, they recognized the mark on the right side of her face and the colorful long hair that seemed to be shining white, but was actually flowing with colors. They covered their little mouth in shock. "Little star." Seeing the two girls' shocked expressions, Yin Nuoxing was even more speechless. She covered her face with her left hand and nodded, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. She said helplessly, "Shui Yan's skin has no effect. My appearance can't change, but the seal has been washed away and is still in my skin." Hearing this soft and beautiful female voice, the surprise in Ziyan's and the others' eyes grew even more. They couldn't help but reach out to hold his face. Ziyan's limpid eyes stared at him without blinking. Suddenly, she smiled brightly, and even the seven-colored light on the side was dimmed. "Little star, you've become a girl. Let's be a lesbian." Ziyan's words shocked Yin Nuoxing and Foam Zi also fell to the ground in shock. He and Exeter looked at each other for a while, and they couldn't help but smile bitterly. This girl really likes Yin Nuoxing, no matter what she looks like. Are you kidding me? I'm still a guy. It's just that there's something wrong with my appearance. MMPH. Yin Nuoxing smiled bitterly and shook his head. Just as he was about to reach out and move away the two jade-like hands that were holding his face, he saw Ziyan's face suddenly come closer. Then his lips felt as if they had touched a soft jelly, which made him swallow back the words he had yet to say. "Wow, Xian is so forward." Fonger blushed upon seeing this extremely abrupt action. She hurriedly turned her head, but she still sneaked a peek at this scene. The celestial pond reflected this scene, and it looked as if two girls were kissing passionately. After a full 15 minutes, Yin Nuoxing was finally released. She hurriedly took a step back, and her face was so red that it looked like blood was going to drip from it. She looked at Xian with a pair of watery Maimao eyes, and her heart was very moved. "Stop fooling around. Let me see the changes after you ate the celestial food." Yin Nuoxing looked at Ziyan with pleading eyes. Then he laughed bitterly. When he heard Ziyan's sweet voice, he lost his temper. Since he couldn't change it, he could only accept it silently. After a thorough examination of Ziyan, Yin Nuoxing was surprised to find that other than the change in her appearance, her physical strength had also increased by an unknown amount. She was very tough, and her jade-like fingers were as white as jade. They were so slender that they seemed like they would break easily. However, according to his estimation, even if she did not use any strength, she could still shatter a magic weapon with just her physical strength. She could even deal with a person with the 6th or 7th seal of the magic rank effortlessly. Even her spiritual strength had become very powerful. As soon as his soul entered the celestial pond, he felt as if he had walked into a vast ocean. Furthermore, his 5 elements body had leveled up, and the meridians in his body had turned into 5 different colors, very similar to his golden meridians. The drawback of his 5 elements body lacking the power of origin seemed to have been eliminated, and he could cultivate normally now. However, he still needed to find the power of origin as soon as possible. Yin Nuoxing couldn't help but praise Foam changes. Her soul was enshrouded in a faint crimson light. Although she was a divine beast, her soul and spiritual strength were still very weak in the early stages. However, the immortal phoenix fruit had made up for this shortcoming, allowing her to use her spiritual strength better. Furthermore, she could use the true phoenix fire more easily now. The carriers have all turned into crystals. To Yin Nuashing's surprise, their energy carriers had all turned into crystalline objects with luster and were no longer black stones. Yes, according to Little Star's speculation, and with the help of the immortal item's energy, it wasn't easy to refine the carriers into crystals. All of a sudden, I feel that the capacity has increased by nearly 20 times. Xian and Mei Mao's eyes were also shining with excitement, and they couldn't stop laughing as they looked at Yin Nuashing. Really? It's actually true? I'm only speculating based on the information in the ancient books. I'm guessing that if you want to refine the carriers into crystals, you have to first shatter them, and then use the origin of elements and the will of elements to condense them into crystals. Yin Nuashing rubbed his cheeks. He only came up with this speculation based on the information in the ancient books, as well as the experience he gained from cultivating the glazed treasure mirror. Although he told Xian and the others about it, he didn't want them to try it. Shattering one's own energy carrier was almost equivalent to destroying one's own cultivation. Who would dare try it so easily? Yes, but we also saw the effect of the celestial pool, so we tried it. It took a lot of energy to forcefully reverse the state of the soul, leaving the body. Feng and nodded lightly. When Yin Nuashing first told her about his speculation, she almost thought that he had gone crazy. Now that she saw that he had really succeeded, she was a little surprised by his thoughts. She didn't know what was in that little brain of his that he could think of such a crazy thing. The graceful and peerless goddess Yin. Xian couldn't help but cover her mouth and giggle. Yin Nuashing's cheeks twitched, and he slapped the celestial pool into the sky again. Chapter 608. After burning the broken bones and flesh of the 3 people on the shore, he put away the long hair that had fallen off and turned around. Seeing the young face reflected in the pool, Yin Nuashing's pretty face darkened slightly. Her 2 rows of white teeth creaked as she gritted her teeth. However, after a moment, she gave up and sighed. Heaven is about to give me a great responsibility. Sigh, I'm used to it. Now, there's nothing I can't get used to. Touching the beautiful face with beautiful patterns, Yin Nuashing couldn't help but bitterly laugh. Xian and Feng looked at each other and shrugged helplessly when they saw him looking at the pool with a conflicted expression on his face. They knew that he would be conflicted for a while in this kind of situation, so they didn't disturb him. They silently looked at his moving little face and smiled gently. Young Hall Master, it's about time to gather. This wisp of energy will guide you to the gathering point. If you've washed in the pool, come back quickly. If you haven't found it yet, give up first. I'll bring you there after you enter the High Light Academy. Elder Jean Chin's words rang in her mind. Yin Nuashing, who was conflicted, was stunned for a moment. She was about to reply when she froze for a second. We've already washed, so we'll go back now. Also, Uncle Chun, just call me Little Star. Young Hall Master sounded a little awkward. Yin Nuashing laughed dryly. She thought about it, but still couldn't change her voice back. Jean Chin was stunned for a moment when he heard the girl's voice. He looked at the jade slip in his hand with a strange expression and scratched his head. Is this the communication jade slip for Young Hall Master? Why is it a girl's reply? It's also not Miss Xian's voice. However, after hearing Yin Nuashing's words, he didn't suspect anything even though he was a little confused. He nodded and said, All right, Young Hall Master, you guys go to the gathering point first. There will be other teachers to lead you later. After he finished speaking, he quickly cut off the communication. Yin Nuashing was stunned and laughed bitterly. Didn't I tell you to change the way you address me? Young Hall Master sounded a little awkward. Forget it. After struggling for a while, Yin Nuashing sighed and turned around. Xian and Feng were standing quietly behind him. Seeing him turn around, they chuckled. Xian chuckled and said, Have you sorted out your emotions? Yin Nuashing scratched her head helplessly and said, Uncle Chun asked us to gather. Let's go back slowly. Isn't it supposed to be a month-long exam? There should be 10 days left until it ends. Did something happen? Zian asked in surprise. I don't know. Let's go. Yun Nuoxing shook his head, turned around, and waved at the two of them. Then, he slowly walked forward. As he walked, he felt a familiar warmth on his left hand. His right shoulder sank slightly. A small pink figure appeared and landed lightly on his shoulder. It even chirped at him. In the next few hours, Yun Nuoxing, Zian, and Fenger strolled leisurely. Although they were just strolling, they flew a great distance with every step. With Yun Nuoxing's control of space, she could shrink the ground into an inch. Moreover, they had gone deep into the forest and had already exceeded the expected area of the exam. Although the gathering place was in the center of the exam area, it wasn't too far for the three of them. At this time, 70 to 80% of the students were gathering there. The skyrocketing popularity could be felt from 1,000 miles away, so they weren't in a hurry to meet up. Although they were walking slowly in the sky, their speed was many times faster than the students who were riding the wind. They had surpassed countless teams of different sizes. Everyone was heading toward the gathering place that Jin Shun had mentioned. That was the last stop of the two academies' assessment. It seems like there are more than 20,000 people. Yun Nuoxing didn't count the number of people who had surpassed him along the way, but with a rough estimate, he felt that it was definitely more than the 20,000 people he had seen the other day. The assessment of the Far Light Academy and the Remote Ocean Academy will not be held in the same place. What young master saw that day was only a portion of the students gathered around Sunglow City. There are also students from other places rushing over. However, young master can rest assured that not all of them will gather in one place. The final assessment will be held in many different places. Overall, there are about 200,000 students in this batch. As for how many will remain, I'm not too sure. As for the academy, there are about 1 million students. There are also millions of students in the academy. Jin Shin's voice rang out in a timely manner, causing Yun Nuoxing to almost spit out a mouthful of blood. Millions of people. These words caused Yun Nuoxing's state of mind to be shaken. His spatial force and light element immediately went out of control, bringing the three of them along with him for an unknown distance. When he came back to his senses, he saw a place where people had gathered. The hubbub of voices was so noisy that Yun Nuoxing and Zian hastily covered their ears. Feng also hastily shrunk her body and rushed into Yun Nuoxing's chest with a whoosh. She poked her head out and carefully looked at the sea of people below. This was a huge and spacious plain that had been split open among the mountains. Hundreds of mountains towered over this plain, and the sea of people spread out over the plain. In the distant mountain range, there is a steady stream of figures flying over with powerful energy. A group of people were riding the wind together, causing a storm to blow over. Even if the people gathered together didn't release their energy, the various kinds of energy that were unintentionally released intertwined and soared into the sky. The momentum caused Yun Nuoxing, who was in the clouds, to be somewhat surprised. However, he was after all someone who had seen a truly grand scene. Even if tens of thousands of immortal and demonic realm experts gathered together, it still couldn't compare to the momentum of hundreds or thousands of God Emperor experts gathered together in the Taiyuan Grand Assembly. However, this is the place where young people gather. If I didn't have such a strange opportunity and bizarre background, perhaps I would also be standing below right now, sighing at the number of experts here. In the eyes of immortal and demonic realm experts, demonic and demonic realm experts are experts. Yun Nuoxing looked at the geniuses and proud sons of heaven from all over the world and sighed. Thousands of thoughts, and thousands of lives gathered here. Only the people who stood out here were the true proud sons of heaven. So many people. Zian's beautiful eyes flickered with dazzling colors. In this place, there were as many immortal steppe cultivators as there were sand in the ocean. Even devil steppe cultivators gathered in groups. Shall we go down? Zian turned to look at Yun Nuoxing and asked softly. Yun Nuoxing looked at the sky below, then looked at the crowd below. After muttering to himself for a while, he took out a black and gold half mask and covered the right side of his face. Xian also understood when she saw this. She took the hat and covered her head, then tidied her clothes. Yin Nuoxing held her hand tightly and took a deep breath. Light essence and spatial force flashed and disappeared, landing on the mountains below. Looking at the sparse figures in the surroundings and seeing that no one seemed to have noticed them, they quickly rushed into the crowd. The two of them had just plunged into the crowd. Although there were many people in the surroundings, there wasn't a team of 2 people at all. They originally thought that the sudden appearance of 2 people in this sea of people wouldn't be noticed, but they didn't expect that dozens of gazes would notice them. Their gazes swept over the 2 of them, and there were even a few swallowing sounds. "Fairy, please wait a moment." Yin Nuoxing pulled Xian to the edge of the crowd, but a voice suddenly sounded. At first, the 2 of them didn't pay attention to it, until a few figures quickly blocked in front of them. Only then did the 2 of them react. Was this someone calling them? However, Yin Nuoxing wasn't too surprised. Xian, this devastatingly beautiful goddess, was standing at the side. Even if she was wearing a hat, her beautiful appearance and outstanding temperament made it easy for people to find her in the crowd. But gradually, Yin Nuoxing felt a little strange. After the few of them came over, they brought a group of people with them. Those people's gazes swept over him and Xian, making his hair stand on end. Could it be that the fairies were calling him? Fairies, could it be that you still haven't found a suitable force to join? How about joining our sect? With us here, you can enter the Far Light Academy with ease. Xian cautiously glanced at Yin Nuoxing. She wanted to see the extent of his patience, but after just a glance, she sighed and shook her head, because she saw him faintly smile, a very dangerous smile. At this moment, there were quite a few gazes in the surroundings that turned over. They looked at the 2 weak people and then looked at the people in front of them, and a look of interest flashed across their eyes. Moreover, there were actually some people who were trying to squeeze their way over. Yin Nuoxing faintly sighed, then chuckled. Just as he was about to say something, he saw the crowd quickly parting. Then, a youth with a gloomy face slowly walked over. Seeing this person, Yin Nuoxing and Xian were startled. This person was that ice-cold, white-clothed youth they saw when they first arrived at the square. This person was also a demon-rank powerhouse and had reached the 9th seal. "What are you doing?" The white-clothed youth coldly glanced at the group of people in front of the sect. That faintly discernible valiant aura scared the surrounding people into taking a few steps back. Without giving the others time to react, the white-clothed youth looked at Yin Nuoxing and Xian. His cold gaze froze for a moment. Then he said in a deep voice, "It's just the 2 of you. Go over." Hearing the same tone, Yin Nuoxing couldn't help but roll his eyes. He really wanted to curse. "Who the hell are you?" But he thought that he should keep a low profile at this time. So he just rolled his eyes and led Xian in the direction that the white-clothed youth was pointing at with his chin. He couldn't help but mutter to himself. Seeing that the 2 of them had obediently walked into the group he was in charge of, the white-clothed young man turned his gaze and coldly glanced at the surrounding people. Then, he coldly snorted, turned around, and slowly walked in the direction that the 2 of them had gone. As soon as this man, who was as cold as a spear, left, many people hurriedly heaved a sigh of relief. His aura was too cold, and his entire person was like a block of ice. This person is probably an old student. He's as cold as the North Ice Realm. Phew, the strength of the demon rank 9 seals. I wonder how many revolutions he has undergone. He's so cold even when facing 2 fairies. I'm afraid that even his heart has been frozen. Yin Nuoxing didn't pay attention to the commotion after the 2 of them left. However, along the way, many gazes were directed at him, which made him a little mad. These gazes more or less contained a sense of amazement. It would be understandable if they were all looking at Xian, but at this time, there were also many gazes sizing him up. He really wanted to gouge out those people's eyes and yell at them. "Can't you differentiate between genders?" After cursing in his heart, he scratched his head with a headache. He knew his own gender, but if others were to look at that face, let alone others, even he himself would think that he was a girl. He couldn't find any fault with that voice either. There will be 2 simple tests in a while. Quickly adjust your breathing. At this moment, the cold, white-clothed man also walked to the side. His eyes were as cold as ice as he glared at the 2 of them. He spoke in an almost commanding tone, causing Yun Nuoxing to lose his temper. Although he was a little unhappy in his heart, compared to those strange gazes, it was still a little better. Chapter 609. In this clearly divided central area, there were dozens of groups of people. They seemed to have come from the same place, or perhaps from the same power. Their strength was not weak, with a demon rank expert leading the group. The others were all at the upper 3rd layer of the immortal rank, as well as the half-demon rank. However, in this place where tens of thousands of students stood, demon rank experts were too common. Immortal rank experts were as common as the sand in the sea, and they were no different from ordinary people. Among these dozens of groups, there was a group that did not have the same symbol and seemed to not see eye to eye with anyone. This group only had about 1,000 people, and the one leading seemed to be the man in white with a cold expression. This group belongs to Instructor Jean Shun. As long as you pass the test, you will be able to enter Instructor Jean Chen's tutelage. That ice-cold fellow is called Guyu. He entered the Farlight Academy 5 years earlier than us. He's already a 9th Seal Devil rank expert. It's said that he's an extremely powerful fellow in the academy. The man standing in front of Yun Nuoxing quietly turned to the side and said softly to the 2. Yun Nuoxing raised her head. This was a very delicate and pretty man, with long hair on both sides of his temples. He had a gentle face, a high-nosed bridge, and a pair of warm eyes. If the man in white called Guyu was an iceberg, then this person was an evergreen mountain in a warm zone. He was like a cup of light tea, and after drinking it for an entire afternoon, it would leave a rich aftertaste and was very pleasing to the eye. My name is Zhong Songbai. How should I address the 2 of you? The man in green who called himself Zhong Songbai cupped his hands towards the 2 with a warm smile on his face and asked softly. Yun Nuoxing glanced at him. This person's face was very warm and was quite lethal to girls who liked warm men. Her evil spirit, I did not see that he had other thoughts, as if he just wanted to get to know them. My surname is Yun, and this is my friend, Zian. Yun Nuoxing said indifferently. Free gift. You're going around picking up girls again. We haven't even asked for the name of the fairy, and you are 1 step ahead of us. So unkind. As soon as Yun Nuoxing finished speaking, a burst of laughter and banter came from the front. When they heard this, Yun Nuoxing and Yun Nuoxing were stunned. Their eyes narrowed slightly as they stared at Zhong Songbai. My name is Songbai, Zhong Songbai. I'm not giving it to you for free. The 2 ladies are like the flawless moon in the sky. How could an ordinary person like me be worthy of you? I just want to get to know the people in the same group. I have no other intentions. Zhong Songbai was not anxious or angry. He faintly sighed and shook his head. Haha, you can brag all you want. You've already asked all the girls in our team for their names. Why don't you ask those big, rough guys for their names? Lecherous is just 1 word, and I'll only say it once. The 2 ladies have to be careful of this beast in human clothing. The loud voice came from the front again. Then, Yun Nuoxing and Yun Nuoxing saw a 2.5-meter tall, giant brawny man. He was wearing a yellow cloak with his arms crossed as he walked towards them with a big laugh. He was like a walking mountain. His arms were as thick as Yun Nuoxing's thighs, and his bulging muscles made the hearts of the people around them tremble. Meet Mountain, don't always tear down my stage. Everyone loves beauty, and I don't have any other thoughts. Zhong Songbai looked at the brawny man walking over and could not help but roll his eyes as he lightly snorted. My name is Chuan Jingshan. The brawny man who was called a meat mountain by Zhong Songbai laughed loudly. His laughter was like thunder reverberating in their ears. Like the former, the 2 of them had the strength of the 3rd seal of the demon rank. They were very powerful in the freshman team. Pangolin, or should I call him a meat mountain, 3rd seal of the demon rank. His physical strength is very strong. When he was reporting in, he sent a demigod instructor flying with a single punch. You can call him a mountain, or just call him a meat mountain. Zhong Songbei glanced at him indifferently and introduced him to Yun Yaxing and Yun Yaxing. Ha ha ha. Don't be afraid, ladies. If someone comes looking for trouble, just say my name. I'll stand up for you. Chuan Jingshan crossed his arms in front of his chest and laughed until the muscles all over his body were trembling. The blood vessels on the surface of his skin were like mountains and rivers running through a mountain range of muscles. He inexplicably felt that this name was very suitable. Yin Yaxing silently glanced at the two of them. This huge, brawny man was standing together with a delicate and pretty man. The two of them seemed to be familiar with each other. The scene was a little strange. The test is actually quite simple. In the past, the last step of the Long Guang Academy's enrollment would be a test. First, it would test your level and age. Those who can reach this point would basically not have any problems. Second, it would look at your activities in the forest during this period of time. As long as you kill a magical beast or demonic beast that is similar to your strength, it won't be a problem. Of course, there are also special circumstances. Also, if you obtain treasures that you don't need in the 100,000 mountains, such as bee souls, profound crystals, and so on, you can hand them over. The Long Guang Academy will give you an equivalent amount of compensation. Zhong Songbei extended 2 fingers and softly explained to Yun Yaxing and Yun Yaxing. Tisk, that's what they say, but every year, the Long Guang Academy still eliminates a lot of people. Sometimes, even if you kill a demonic beast that is 2 realms higher than you, you still can't get in. I have a brother like that. Deshan and Chuan Jingshan sneered. The Long Guang Academy has its own way of measuring people. We can't control this. There's also the 3rd test, the divinity test. However, this test will not affect whether you can enter the academy or not. Zhong Songbei extended his 3rd finger and lightly said, "Divinity?" Hearing this, Xian couldn't help but blink and repeat doubtfully. It's a score. The higher the divinity, the easier it is for a person to advance to the beginner god rank or even a late god rank. The awakening of divinity is carried out at the demigod rank and is currently in a hidden state. However, regardless of whether it is awakened or not, the score will not be affected. As for how divinity is evaluated, I don't really remember. Yin Nuoxing softly explained to her, but after speaking for a while, she frowned slightly and forgot what she meant. Divinity comes from the bloodline, spirit, soul, and elements. When a cultivator awakens divinity at the demigod rank, before advancing to the beginner god rank, they need to completely fuse their spirit, soul, and elemental energy with their elemental energy. After completing this, they can advance to the beginner god rank after fusing the 3 with their divinity at the demigod rank. At this moment, a young man with a tall and straight figure walked over slowly with his hands behind his back. His black clothes swayed, and there was a gentle smile on his handsome face. He was gentle, refined, and somewhat mysterious. "Old Lin, you love to talk about these things. Have you become stupid from reading too many books?" Seeing this elegant man strolling over, Deshan also laughed a few times. Zhong Songbei also walked up and patted him on the shoulder. The 3 of them seemed to be acquaintances. That elegant man laughed and punched their chests. Then, he looked at Yin Nuoxing and Chuan Jingshan. He placed his right hand on his left chest and smiled in a very gentlemanly manner. "I'm Lin Xin. He's a bookworm," Deshan added from the side. "When he's calm, he's a nerd. When he's crazy, he can fight better than anyone," Zhong Songbei said indifferently. Lin Xin only laughed at the words of his 2 old friends. It could be considered as a tacit agreement. Yin Nuoxing nodded slightly in response. Then, she thought for a while and suddenly smiled faintly. She put a finger on her lips and said, "We came out behind the backs of the elders at home. Our names." When Xian heard him say this, Mei Mao blinked. She quickly covered his mouth with her jade-like hand and said nervously, "Little star, you can't say it. We'll be caught." "I understand. I understand. I understand." When Deshan saw the 2 of them, he immediately understood. He quickly reached out his cushion-sized palm to block the 2 of them. He sighed bitterly and said, every family has its own difficulties. The two of you must have come here to avoid your family's trifling matters. I understand. He pinched the black gold half mask lightly and turned to look at Xian. He realized that this girl was winking slyly at him. Mei Mao couldn't help but laugh. This girl really knew what he meant. Also, I'm a man, Yin Nuoxing said indifferently again. Huh? Zhong Songbai and the other two suddenly widened their eyes. They stared at Yin Nuoxing in disbelief. This is a man? But this girl's face, this jade-like skin, this girl's voice, and no Adam's apple. Is she a man? Isn't she a woman dressed as a man? Could it be that such a beautiful person must be a man? But after taking a closer look, they seemed to understand why that place was so flat. God. Zhong Songbai's face flushed red. His eyes were about to pop out. He recalled how he kept calling a boy a fairy. Now he felt like his head was about to explode. At the front of the group, there was a sudden and violent explosion of energy. But rather than saying that it was a sudden explosion, there were actually two waves of energy colliding at the front. It seemed like someone was fighting. But with the sea of people, high platforms, and buildings in between, he couldn't see clearly what was actually happening. Seeing that Yun Nuoxing looked over with interest, Zhong Songbai smiled faintly. Although his smile was a little unnatural, he said, "There are two groups of people fighting in front. One group is led by a kid in his 20s who is at the 9th level of the immortal realm. The other group is led by a little girl who is younger than him, but already has the strength of a half-demon. The other group is led by a few half-demon experts from a small force in a nearby city." That kid from the 9th level of the immortal realm won. He seems to be very talented. Yin Nuoxing glanced over and saw the situation clearly. She didn't feel much emotion. It was normal to fight against someone of a higher level. He won? It's also within the acceptable range. Zhong Songbai was startled. Then he nodded. He wasn't surprised at all. Haha, that pretty boy isn't bad. It's just that he's too thin and weak. It would be better if he could train his muscles. Big Mountain laughed loudly. His laughter shook the ground. No matter who started a fight between students or how it ended, the loser will lose the right to enter the academy. Lin Exin stroked his long, slender hair and smiled faintly. He looked at Yin Nuoxing strangely. He still doubted whether this guy was a man or a woman. Seeing his strange gaze, Yin Nuoxing also understood what he was thinking. She couldn't help but smile bitterly. There's no need to look. I'm a man. As for why I look like this, it's hard to explain. Just as they were talking, the battle in front of them ended. A golden light shot up into the sky and tore the clouds apart. The turbulent energy caused the air to distort slightly. Wong. Just as the beam of light shot into the clouds, everyone saw that the ground in this area suddenly lit up with golden energy patterns. They could faintly feel that the elemental arrangement in the world had become a little more chaotic. Everyone's gaze was focused on the ground. Uneasiness, calmness, doubt, and other emotions intertwined together. It's coming, it's coming. The final test and divinity test. Big Mountain looked at the golden patterns on the ground and seemed to understand something. He couldn't help but laugh loudly. Clearly, he was mentally prepared. Under the gazes of countless people, the golden energy patterns finally turned into a huge golden array that covered the entire plane. Golden light filled the air, but there was no reaction. It only made people feel warm. It wrapped around their bodies, but they couldn't touch it. The gates of the Farlight Academy have opened. Those who don't meet the standards will be sent back to Sunrise City. During the process of teleportation, you will undergo a divinity test. Please try to empty your mind and body as much as possible. Do not resist. As the golden array appeared, an aged, hoarse voice slowly descended from the sky. It was as if a god was staring at everyone. This voice instantly silenced the noisy area. Countless people's eyes turned red from excitement. Although they didn't know what the standards were, they were all confident that they could enter the Farlight Academy. Everyone was very excited, but they didn't make any loud shouts. They all heard the aged voice and took deep breaths, slowly emptying their minds and bodies. Yin Nuoxing and Xian looked at each other. The two of them held each other's hands tightly. They took a deep breath and slowly exhaled. Then They closed their eyes and emptied their minds. They didn't want to think about anything. Everyone else did the same. After a minute or two, as if sensing that everyone had quieted down, the golden array on the ground began to emit some golden particles. When these golden particles covered the entire area, everyone felt as if something was scanning their bodies. Clearly, this was an examination. However, no one paid any attention to it, as if they had truly emptied their minds. After that, a portion of the people silently disappeared without a trace. Only a few people who had opened their eyes saw it. It seemed that those who had disappeared had lost the opportunity to enter the Farlight Academy and had been eliminated. When a number of people in the area stabilized, some sharp-eyed people discovered that 40% of the people had disappeared. However, the number of people on the plane was still in the tens of thousands. There were also some who opened their eyes and took a peek. When they discovered that they were still in the golden array, they couldn't help but pat their chests and let out a sigh of relief. When the elimination ended, the golden particles slightly rotated, forming a whirlpool that revolved around everyone. The majority of people noticed the change in the golden particles, but they didn't notice anything different. Thus, they didn't pay any attention to it. As for those who knew, they knew that this was the divinity test. Chapter 6:10. On the plain square, the golden particles formed a small storm. Countless golden particles spun rapidly, entering and exiting the bodies of the people present. However, no one felt any discomfort. The people who stayed behind rejoiced when they saw the people who had been laughing and chatting around them disappear. They were eliminated. Then they closed their eyes and accepted the divinity test. Those who suddenly heard the noise around them opened their eyes in a daze. When they saw themselves on the square of Xiaowang City, they were stunned for a long time. They stood there like pillars for who knew how long. When they looked at the people around them, they felt that they were mocking them. Finally, they couldn't bear the pressure in their hearts and ran away. At this moment, light gathered in the void. An old figure stared at the bodies of the students in the golden array on the plain square below. In the eyes of the latter and the others, they could only see the golden particles spinning around them. However, in the eyes of the old man, he could see golden pillars of light rising from the center of the spinning golden particles. Those pillars of light were exactly the same. They were about 30 meters tall, and at the top, there were golden numbers. "Old man, we've already finished on our side. Why have you only just started?" In the pitch-black void, a faint laughter sounded. The old man raised his head and looked at the pitch-black void behind him. There, 3 people were walking over together and looking at him with smiles on their faces. Soon. There's no rush." The old man smiled faintly. His smile squeezed the wrinkles and facial features of his face together. "Hey, I found a few pretty good kids. The other 2 also have some good seedlings. They've already been sent to the academy. They're just waiting for you." A middle-aged man crossed his arms and smiled. "How's the divinity test?" The old man wasn't in a hurry and asked slowly. "Oh, of course, there aren't any that have reached 120. There aren't any that have reached 100 either. There are 3 divinities between 90 and 100. Then, if we remove the divinities between 0 and 60, there are more than 10,000 divinities between 60 and 90. There are also a few hundred people between 80 and 90. The quality of this batch of students is not bad. Those 3 little guys with divinities over 90 will definitely become gods in the future. The worst one will be able to enter the emperor of the underworld. I guarantee it." Another person who looked very young said in detail. "There are 3 between 90 and 100. The old man chuckled as he stroked his beard and nodded. Then, he turned his gaze downwards and said, "Let's see what happens here. Hey, I found one. 98. My goodness, this must be the guy with the highest divinity in this batch." The middle-aged man suddenly became excited as if he had seen a treasure. He pointed at the front of the line. When the other 3 heard this, they slowly turned their gazes over and fixed their gazes on a young man who looked no more than 20 years old. The old man chuckled and said, "This little guy just defeated a half-demon rank 9 transformation with Xianzhou's strength. It's not surprising that he has 98 divinities. Look, the girl next to him is also 96 years old. The three we saw were between 90 and 95. 95 is a threshold. There are very few people whose divinities reach 95. The middle-aged man took a breath of cold air. Haha, do you remember that 2 years ago we took in a batch of students? Most of them were around 20 years old. Their strength wasn't very high, but their divinities were above 80 on average. There were also 2 little guys who reached 94. The old man stroked his beard and smiled. Those little guys are still cultivating in the academy, but they have already reached the demon rank. The young man nodded and said, "Okay, it's about time. Send them in." There are also 2 divinities above 95 here. This way, there will be 5 freshmen with divinities above 90. The old man understood and waved his right hand. The huge golden array immediately began to rotate. Waves of spatial fluctuations were transmitted, and the people in the square began to be transported from outside to inside. Just as everyone was about to be transported away, the old man's eyes widened, and the middle-aged man let out a cry of surprise. Looking at his expression, he was even shocked. He pointed below and said in shock, "More than 100. I saw 3 digits. Stop." However, as soon as he called out, the square on the plane immediately vanished. Not a single person remained. There was only a golden formation that slowly revolved. "You said 3 digits? Above 100? Are you sure?" The young man took 2 steps forward. His eyebrows were tightly knitted together. He looked at the old man and the middle-aged man and said in a deep voice, "Although this old man has lived for a long time, I'm not so old that I'm dizzy. I'm sure I saw 3 digits." The middle-aged man nodded fiercely. "No, you missed it. There are 2. There are 2 students who have divinities above 100. Just as he finished speaking, the old man sighed again, then shook his head. Hearing this, the other 2 people's expressions became serious. If there really was a number of 100, then this matter was a little big, and they had to tell the dean. "Let's go and report. Old Lin, you continue. If possible, find out who those 2 people are." The middle-aged man muttered to himself for a while. He looked at the other 2 and nodded. Then, with a flash, the 3 of them disappeared into the void. The old man called Old Lin sighed faintly. His body flashed, and he also disappeared from the dark place. No one else knew what they were talking about. When Yin Nuashing and the others were transported away by the golden array, their tightly shut eyes slowly opened. When they came back to their senses, they were already in a vast hall. When they looked ahead, they couldn't see the end of the hall. However, when they looked at the entrance behind them, they could see a blue sky and lazy white clouds. They were no longer in the plains between the mountains. Where is this? Countless people looked around in confusion. Was this where the Long Light Academy was located? Or is it the entrance? Little fellows, congratulations on passing the Long Light Academy's test. Just as everyone was looking around in confusion, an old figure suddenly appeared in the air of the hall. It was as if he walked out from the void. This voice was not unfamiliar to everyone. It was already the 2nd time they heard it. When they were at the plaza, it seemed to be this old man who was speaking. Above divine underworld. This aura's strength, it's probably underworld king god? Or heavenly god? Yin Nuashing raised his head and stared at the white-haired old man. His evil spirit naturally revolved, but he couldn't see through the old man's strength. He could only feel a strong pressure from the old man. However, this pressure was far from a god-emperor expert. However, his evil spirit couldn't see through the old man's strength. This old man's name is Lin Yao. I'm an elder of the Long Light Academy. At the same time, I'm also responsible for bringing you guys into the Long Light Academy. In the air, the old man chuckled as he looked at the sea of people below. His old eyes were filled with a trace of light. On the faces of the youths, there was a trace of anticipation and excitement. No matter how outstanding someone was, they would be drowned by the sea of people. But to find 2 people in the sea of people was extremely difficult. To be able to reach here, it's your ability. It's also your first step to success. It's also a turning point in your life. As for how much of a turning point there is, it'll depend on your own efforts. Elder Lin faintly smiled. Shortly after, he waved his hand, and a ball of light appeared before him. The ball of light split into tens of thousands of pieces and landed in the palms of every student below. As the light dissipated, a golden token that looked like a shield appeared in everyone's hands. In the middle of the token, there was the word "Long Light" written in black. On the back, there was a huge number 0. 0, what's that? The token of the Long Light Academy? A symbol of identity? When everyone received the token, they were a little puzzled. Whispers rang out from every corner of the academy. The value on the token is the energy value. You can understand it as the amount of resources of the Long Light Academy that you possess. It replaces the currency of the outside world. Gold coins are not circulated in the Long Light Academy. In the academy, only the value on the token that you possess is the wealth that you possess. In the Long Light Academy, you can use these values to exchange for anything that you want. Profound arts, heart sutra, profound skills, weapons, arrayed diagrams, medicine recipes, and materials. These are basically unique to the Long Light Academy. Wow! When the old man's voice rang out, there was an uproar. Many people looked at the token and their imagination started to run wild. Wow! Isn't this just changing the currency and not being able to use money? Isn't this turning me from a tall, rich, and handsome man into a tall, poor, and handsome man? Yin Nuoxing, on the other hand, stared blankly at the token in his hand. Wasn't this sealing up his countless assets with one strike? Little star, you still have other materials. For example, mysterious crystals. These things are very popular among the strong. High-grade mysterious crystals are priceless outside. They're even more precious in the academy. The academy will definitely exchange resources for them, Xian reminded with a light smile. When Yin Nuoxing heard this, she reacted and asked doubtfully, "Oh, that's right. Why is it 0? When we leave this place later, it will be distributed according to our strength and the test in the mountains." Oh, there are quite a lot of energy values from magic rank and above. The price of the items required for magic rank is also not cheap. Furthermore, if the items obtained in the mountains are very precious, you'll be able to obtain a high amount of energy value as compensation, Zhong Sonbai said. The old man looked at the extremely excited students below and smiled slightly. His wide and long sleeves waved gently in the air, and a 10,000 feet large golden door suddenly appeared in the originally endless large hall. The 2 doors had already been opened, and in the middle was a golden swirl. That place was connected to the High Light Academy. Longguan Academy welcomes everyone. When you enter the portal later, please don't crowd. At this moment, all the students were looking at the opened golden door with fervent gazes. Yin Nuoxing also took a deep breath. The trial of light seemed to be not far away from him. After the elder spoke, countless students cried out loudly and charged towards the large golden door. The chaotic scene caused the elder to feel somewhat helpless. A glint flashed across his aged eyes as he stared intently at the large door. The instant those students charged through the door, charged into the vortex, a golden light pillar would appear in his eyes. However, no one discovered it. All right, let me see which 2 little fellows it is. He narrowed his eyes and looked at the students who were excitedly rushing through the golden door. He didn't dare to slack off in the slightest and didn't even dare to blink his eyes. When most of the people in the hall had left, Yin Nuoxing also let out a soft cry. Big Mountain and the rest also laughed loudly as they followed him and Xian and ran toward the golden door. The old man felt that the number of people in the hall was decreasing. There was less than a tenth of them left. However, he still didn't see the 2 people with 3-digit divinities. The 2 little fellows in their 90s had already entered. He couldn't help but feel somewhat depressed. Could it be that his eyesight was really wrong? However, he wasn't the only one who saw it. Just as he sighed and helplessly rubbed his eyes, a few resplendent pillars of light bloomed. The numbers that jumped out side by side caused him to suddenly widen his eyes. This time, he definitely didn't see wrongly. In that instant, he suddenly lowered his head. However, he could only see a few blurry figures. They had already been swallowed by the golden vortex. However, he still managed to capture some characteristics. The two people seemed to want to cover themselves. However, this method of doing so stood out in this place where everyone was dressed the same. Hadn't mask? The old man scratched his head and heaved a sigh of relief. At this moment, the golden door had also dimmed slightly. Maintaining it for a long time had also taken a toll on him. However, fortunately, he had finally found them. Chapter 611. The divine world was incomparably vast, and there were countless races living in great numbers. There were also innumerable great forces, and the number of academies were as many as the stars in the sky. Other than the most famous Red Star Academy in the entire divine world, there were also many other well-known academies. If there was an academy that was worthy of being mentioned in the entire divine world, that region would become famous because of it. Among those many brilliant stars, when mentioning Taiyuan region, other than the Red Star Academy, many people would easily associate it with the Farlight Academy. This was one of the elemental academies that was quite famous even in the divine world. Other than having an element in its name, it was more or less related to the 9 shrines that stood in the clouds. Countless geniuses gathered in these academies, releasing their talents that could not be concealed. It was said that the most accomplished ones would be sent to the 9 shrines. The realm of the gods was so vast that even the gods couldn't easily explore it. The living beings in the realm of the gods had innumerable forces. However, regardless of whether it was the human race, the demon race, or the Yao race, they would all send their people to the great academies to study and carefully conceal their identities. From this, one could see the unique status of the great academies. And everyone knew that the forces of an academy were divided into 2 sides, the light side and the dark side. The light side was what it looked like on the surface, and the dark side was the vast and seemingly endless interpersonal relationships. For countless years, it was unknown how many experts came from these academies. Although they had left for many years, they still had an inseparable connection with these academies. Perhaps many of them would never return, but this hidden force would not change. At this point, even the Farlight Academy was no exception. And when this academy was related to a supreme force in the divine world, this academy's reputation was even greater, and it was difficult for people to not know about it. This was also the source of the Farlight Academy's confidence. It might not be comparable to the Red Star Academy, but the connections and background it had were not much weaker than the Red Star Academy. However, the premise of this was that no one knew that there were several gods in the Red Star Academy. If this news were to spread, not to mention the reputation of the academy and how the students would react, there would be a bunch of high-level gods who would pay a visit to the academy, do everything they could, and then kneel down and beg to be a teacher. When Yin Nuoxing and the others came out of the portal with a slight sense of dizziness, they hurriedly helped the people beside them to stand firm. Yin Nuoxing, however, turned around abruptly, only to see the students coming out of the portal. She raised her eyes slightly and could see a vast and endless sky. "What's wrong?" San, who was at the side, shook his slightly dizzy head, calmed down, and saw the puzzled and dignified face, could not help but ask. "Nothing. When we entered the portal, I felt like I was being probed. Maybe it was an illusion." Yin Nuoxing shook her head with a smile. She turned her head, looked at the scorching sun in the sky, and squinted her eyes slightly. She only took a glance, then lowered her head. After looking around for a while, she saw a majestic scene. They appeared on a high platform that was almost 10,000 feet tall. Standing at the edge of the platform, they could see the stairs below, as well as the vague traces of Shaoguang City. However, in front of them, there was a vast mountain range with no end in sight. In the mountain forest, there were countless huge palaces hidden. The crisscrossing mountain range was currently high in the sky, and they could see the starlight falling like a silver waterfall, adorning the lush mountain forest. Shaoguang City's Farlight Academy is just the entrance. Climb up from there, pass through the portal, and enter the real Farlight Academy. It's hidden in the mountains, Yin Nuoxing instantly saw the gap in space, but the two places were seamlessly connected. If one did not have the evil spirit eye to observe, it would be useless no matter how carefully one looked. It would cause one to mistakenly think that the academy was just outside Xiaowang City. The scene in front of them was like layers of waves crashing into the eyes of the new students. Countless excited shouts rang out from the 10,000 feet tall stone platform. In the vast academy, figures flew past, and the mountain forest was filled with the aura of energy clashing. Moreover, there was a volcano in the distance. It was rich in fire element and was very suitable for people who could control fire element to cultivate. Wow, how grand and primitive. I like it. Mountain also saw the volcano and could not help but laugh. This Farlight Academy was not small. Cultivating in such a primitive environment was very beneficial for people who could control various elements. And in this 100,000 mountain range, there was an extremely huge mountain peak. The shape of the mountain peak was very strange, like a huge sword that was 1,000,000 zhang tall that was stationed on the ground. If it were not for the green grass and yellow sand, perhaps anyone would have mistaken it for a huge sword. On the wide sword hilt of the giant sword mountain, there were many figures standing on the left and right sword hilts. Although they were just standing there quietly, they gave off a very strange and elegant feeling. If one looked carefully, they could even see the names of the people standing on top of these figures. This is the Farlight Academy's combat strength ranking. It lists the top 1,000 students. The ones on the left are Immortal Step, and the ones on the right are Half Demon Step and Demon Step. The closer to the middle, the higher the ranking. A cold and indifferent voice sounded from the side. Yin Nuoxing turned his head, only to see Gu Yu slowly walking towards them. He lifted his head to look at the enormous sword mountain peak, as a trace of melancholy was present in his icy cold voice. Yin Nuoxing's heart skipped a beat. She looked at the right side of the huge sword, and after a while, she saw a cold silhouette. It was none other than Gu Yu. His position was actually ranked number 14 on the Devil Step Combat Strength ranking. Ninth seal of the Devil Step. His strength is at the peak of the Devil Step, but he's only number 14? Seeing that silhouette, Yin Nuoxing glanced at the melancholy Gu Yu beside her as she mumbled in her heart. What's the difference between being on the rankings and not being on the rankings? Yin Nuoxing asked. Only those in the top 100 will be different. Those in the top 100 will receive the Academy's rewards according to their rankings, energy value. As for those on the Immortal Step, once they break through the Immortal Step, their names will be removed from the Immortal Step. Gu Yu coldly replied. The changes in the rankings of the Devil Step Combat Strength rankings attract the most attention, especially the changes in the top 30. From the top 30 onwards, for every difference in rank, the energy value rewards would be many times greater. Hence, the changes in the rankings are the most intense. However, the rankings between the 30th and 50th places are all fixed. Yin Nuoxing could sense that when he spoke, he was sighing. Given that he was ranked number 14 on the Devil rankings, he was still sighing. She wondered if something had happened to him in the past. Number 10 on the Devil rankings, Zhong Songling. Songbai, your elder sister actually managed to enter the top 10. In the future, we will be hugging your thighs. Mountain stared at the names on the Devil rankings as he mumbled. After that, he suddenly laughed uproariously. When Yin Nuoxing heard this, she hurriedly turned her gaze over. When she reached the 10th position, she saw the silhouette of a female with magnificence through the generations. Upon closer inspection, her features were somewhat similar to Zhong Songbai's. Zhong Songbai glanced at her and glanced at the Devil rankings. After that, she calmly spoke, Isn't old Lin's elder brother also ranked number 7 on the Devil rankings? Mountain, your elder brother is also ranked number 8. You still want to rely on me? Why don't you go and look for your elder brother? Upon hearing this, the expressions of Lin, Xin, and Mountain froze. After that, they dryly laughed and rubbed their cheeks in an unnatural manner. Mountain bitterly smiled. My elder brother said if there's nothing important, don't look for him. Let's fight on our own. My elder brother is about the same. Bai Songbai, your elder sister is so good to you. She wouldn't abandon you alone. Lin Xian let out a long sigh. He patted Zhong Songbai's shoulder as he calmly spoke. I'm afraid if I say it out loud, my elder sister will give me a slap. Zhong Songbai's face twitched unnaturally as she calmly spoke. When Guyu heard the conversation between the three of them, he couldn't help but turn his gaze over, carefully observing the three of them. He started for a moment, truly feeling that they were somewhat similar to those three old rivals of his. However, he didn't say anything. His expression was still as cold as ever. When Yin Noashing heard the conversation between the three of them, she had some guesses in her heart. These three might be childhood friends, or maybe their entire family knew each other. Who's number one? The others, who were also looking at the gigantic sword mountain, hurriedly shifted their gazes to the leftmost position on the devil rankings, staring at that figure. Over there, a name exuded a stifling feeling, as though it could blot out the sky and cover the earth. Number one on the devil rankings, Shueling Feng. That figure exuded a sense of aloofness, but upon closer inspection, one would feel that he was very calm. But no matter how one looked at him, they would all feel as though there was a mountain pressing down on them. They had just entered, but that person was already standing at the peak. Yin Nuoxing's gaze slowly swept across the figures one by one. Then, his eyelids drooped, and he didn't have much interest. Unlike other people who would feel their blood boil when they saw those names and images, treating them as targets, he didn't feel any impact at all. He even felt a little helpless. Are you tired? Sensing that Qin Wentian's mood was somewhat low, Zian gently held his hand as she asked in a gentle voice. No, when I saw those names, I felt somewhat moved. Yin Nuoxing shook his head. After thinking for a while, he still didn't say anything, feeling somewhat disappointed. Upon hearing that, Zian's heart pounded. Mei Mao felt some heartache as she looked at him. She had seen his myriad of emotions before. Even when facing deity-level experts, he wouldn't fear them at all. Even when facing God Emperors, he would be able to cause them to fail miserably. The power he controlled was so powerful that all his enemies feared him. However, it was as though the heavens were playing a joke on him. After grasping such power, his soul unknowingly became tainted with devil qi. In order to prevent himself from losing control, he used the divine physique to suppress his own cultivation. If one were to think about the worst, he might never be able to break through the devil realm and step into the demigod realm. Who could understand the bitterness here? If he wanted to, he would be able to step into the demigod realm in half a year in the great mountain monarch star region. When she thought of this, Zian felt her heart throbbing with pain. She couldn't help but tighten her grip on Qin Wentian's hand. It's fine. If you can't cultivate, then so be it. This is also very good. As long as the divine physique doesn't reach the initial god realm, those who covet it won't make a move. Yin Nuoxing seemed to have sensed her emotions. He also tightened his grip on her hand, interlocking their fingers as he transmitted his voice. That indifferent tone of his caused Zian to feel even more heartache in her heart. On the towering stone platform, tens of thousands of freshmen stared at the name at the top of the devil rankings, feeling a sense of pressure. Some people even felt their breathing quickening. Even for those freshmen who were stronger and considered themselves geniuses, they felt a trace of longing and fear in their hearts. Qin Wentian was an expert who stood at the peak of the Far Light Academy. 2 years ago, I met him once. 2 years ago, he was already the strongest student. Even now, he is still the strongest. At that time, he accepted a mission that required the assistance of many people. There was a power that hunted down students from 2 different academies in the mountains. The strongest expert of that power was someone who just broke through to the initial god realm. There were also many demigods and peak devil ranked experts. However, he single-handedly annihilated the entire power. Guyu let out a long sigh as a complicated look appeared in his eyes. That day, the setting sun was as red as blood. A young man whose entire body was dyed red with blood dragged a godchild expert with his spear, leaving a trail of blood behind him as he walked into the Far Light Academy. shocking the entire academy. This also caused Guyu, who was ranked number 14 on the Devil rankings, to feel a terrifying pressure. He is a freak, a monster among freaks. Freshman, the current him isn't someone you guys can look up to. After Guyu finished recalling, he let out a long sigh. He turned and coldly spoke to the silent freshman. The path has to be walked one step at a time. The current you guys are ranked on the right side of the gigantic sword. To you guys, it's still too early. 2 years, 3 years, and you guys will have the qualifications to ascend to the top of the Devil rankings. Half a month later, there will be a grand event for the freshmen. That's a test, and even the older students will come to spectate. All the freshmen will be able to display their abilities there. But from now onwards, from the moment you guys entered the Farlight Academy, you are all true students. It's best if you toss aside the nonsense about the powers behind you. In this place, strength speaks louder than words. Only by displaying your abilities will you be able to obtain the respect of others. Guyu coldly said, "In a while, there will be a teacher who will bring you guys to the freshman dormitory." As for Teacher Jean Shin's group, he has some urgent matters to attend to. "Follow me," Guyu indifferently said. Just as his voice rang out, dozens of figures appeared from the void. Finally, they hovered in the air. The surging aura from those figures caused Yun Nuoxing's face to twitch. They were actually divine underworld experts. There were even a few whose cultivation levels could not be seen. "Little Gu, is Jean Shun in charge of your group?" Those dozens of teachers spread out and distributed the students. Yin Nuoxing and the rest were just about to follow Guyu when they suddenly heard a lovely laughter. All of them stopped and turned their gazes, only to see a slender figure flying towards them, after which it landed a short distance away and transformed into a beautiful woman in red clothes. Her beautiful face was filled with a dignified aura, while a trace of gentleness was present between her brows. The two opposing auras made her appear extremely charming. Elder Yin. When Guyu saw the person who had arrived, he was startled for a moment. The coldness on his face slightly dissipated as he cupped his hands together and nodded his head. "Yes, teacher said that he had some matters to attend to and asked me to help him." "Tisish, how could he not have matters to attend to?" The beautiful woman in red clothes curled her lips. Her long and narrow Mei Mao turned around and was startled when she saw Zian. After which, she stared at the girl beside him. A trace of astonishment flashed across Mei Mao's eyes. Seeing her staring at him, Yin Nuoxing was also startled. His brain spun, and he seemed to have understood something. What happened next made him even more certain. The beautiful woman smiled and winked at him. "Mei Mao," she transmitted her voice. "Little God, I'm Yin Yu Ting from the Fire Divine Palace. Just call me Yi Ting. If you have any matters in the future, come and find me." After saying that, she smiled at Zian beside him. Then, she waved her hand at Guyu and said, "Go, go. Bring them around to familiarize themselves with the academy." After saying that, she turned around and disappeared. Guyu and the others had strange expressions on their faces. They scratched their heads in confusion, not knowing what this elder was doing here. Did I just see that beautiful sister smiling at me? Chuan Jingshan grinned and scratched his head. Misconception. Yes, misconception. Zhong Songbai and Lin Xin both rolled their eyes. They even felt that she was smiling at them. Who knew who she was actually looking at? Yin Nuoxing also couldn't help but roll his eyes. "Let's go. I'll bring you to the dormitory." Guyu scratched his head inexplicably. He didn't think too much about it. With a wave of his hand, he took the lead and flew down the high platform. "Let's go." Yin Nuoxing also smiled at Zian and followed. Zhong Songbai and the other two also followed closely. They were also Elder Jean Chen's team. Chapter 612. The majestic team of 1,000 people followed Guyu and rushed down the high platform. Below the stone platform, a lush mountain forest appeared. One palace hall after another came into view. In the distance, many figures could be seen flying in the air. Some of them stood in the mountain forest, staring at the group of new students with ridicule in their eyes. They seemed to be older students. Under Guyu's lead, Yin Nuashing and the rest headed east. After nearly 20 minutes, they stopped. Then, he pointed at a golden forest in the distance and said, "That golden forest is where teacher rests. If you have any problems, you can go look for him." Then, he pointed down and said, "This is our dormitory. Oh, if you have more energy, you can change to a place you like." Everyone looked in the direction of the finger and saw that there were many huge pavilions and houses in the mountain forest. There was also a lake in the distance. Looking further, they saw that the volcano was 100 miles away from this place. "Right, let's see how much energy you have." Guy suddenly thought of something. He turned around and looked at everyone. He was still holding the Far Light Academy token in his hand and waved it in front of everyone. Hearing this, everyone hurriedly took out their tokens. Yin Nuashing stretched his head and looked at Zhong Songbai's token. Then he said softly, 2,000 energy. "Why do we only have 2,500? Mountain also waved the token in his hand with a puzzled look. The amount of initial energy is based on the entrance examination and one's own strength. There won't be any mistakes. If you want to hand in anything or use your energy to exchange for something, you can go to the Azure Cloud Pavilion later." Guyu said indifferently. Yin Nuashing rubbed his chin and looked at Lin Xin. The latter saw him stretch his neck and smiled. He opened the token in his hand and turned it to the back. On it, there were some numbers, 3,200. Why? Why does old Lin have 700 more than me? Mountain was instantly dumbfounded. He did not understand why. Who told you to be lazy during the examination? You went to sleep after killing a few magical beasts. Zhong Songbai rolled his eyes and said unhappily, "I only have 2,000. Brother Yin, what about you two?" Lin Xian smiled carelessly and looked at Yin Nuashing. His expression was still a little strange. After all, he really had a girl's face and a girl's voice. He wasn't used to calling him Brother Yin. Xian played with a strand of hair and opened her hand. Everyone hurried over to take a look and couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of saliva. 7,000 energy values. Everyone was shocked by the number on Xian's tile. Lin Xian's group was also speechless. What did this girl with an unclear face do during the test? Why did she have so many? Yin'er, please take care of me. Yin Nuashing's colorful eyes sparkled beautifully. She looked at Xian ingratiatingly and said with a flattering smile. Hearing this, Xian covered her mouth and giggled. She lifted his chin with her jade-like fingers and said, "Good boy, I'll take care of you. I'm blind. This dog food." Mountain saw the atmosphere between the two of them and directly howled in pain. He covered his eyes and screamed. "I didn't do anything during the test. I didn't kill a single magical beast. You won't give me 0 energy values, right?" Yin Nuashing smiled bitterly and took out her tile. "There's strength in it, so it won't be 0. Magic rank powerhouses start with at least 1,500, Guyu said indifferently. Oh, hearing this, Yin Nuashing scratched his head and flipped the token over. Everyone leaned over to take a look. 5 numbers, 18,000. Who? When Zhong Songbai and the others saw the energy value of Yin Nuashing's tile, they spat out mouthfuls of saliva. Oh my God, who's taking care of who? The energy value is 9 times higher than theirs. You. Even Guyu was dumbfounded. He had seen so many new students, but he had never seen anyone with an energy value of more than 5,000. Xian had the strength of a 3rd seal of the magic rank. If she risked her life to kill magical beasts and killed high-level magical beasts and achieved good results, he could understand. But Yin Nuashing was only a 1st seal of the magic rank, and she said she had never killed a magical beast before. Little star, please take care of me. Xian blinked at Mei Mao and laughed. She tilted her head and leaned on Yin Nuashing's shoulder and smiled gently. Hey, no problem. Although Yin Nuashing was a little dumbfounded when she saw the 5 numbers, she still agreed with a big smile. Enough. Stop showing off your dog food. Burn it, burn it. Zhong Songbai and the other 2 howled and roared. Then, they moved closer with flattering expressions and grinned. Big pot, the 3 of us will follow you. Everyone smiled bitterly. This energy value. Let me guess. The Academy issued a mission that rewards energy value after completion. Is there any other way? Yin Nuashing waved the token in her hand and asked Guyu. She had guessed a little when she heard the word mission. Guyu silently glanced at her, then let out a long sigh. His tone returned to its usual indifferent state. Doing missions is indeed possible. You can also gain experience. There are other ways. You can turn in some precious materials, black crystals, medicinal herbs, crystals, magical beast essences, crystal cores, and beast souls. Students can also trade privately. Of course, the Azure Cloud Pavilion is the place to do this. As for missions, you can receive them from the War God Temple. There are missions from low to high level. If you find a suitable residence, you can use the token to construct an elemental energy array. This requires energy values. However, it can greatly increase your rate of cultivation. As for the grade, you can decide for yourself, Guyu said. All right, the freshmen's residences are also divided into 3 levels: palace, loft, and ordinary buildings. The words ordinary buildings are really prominent. Everyone smiled bitterly. Palace buildings can activate the energy arrays of the upper 3 grades of the devil rank, or even the demigod and god rank. Loft buildings can activate the energy arrays of the upper 3 grades of the immortal rank to the middle 3 grades of the devil rank. Ordinary buildings start from the demigod rank, Guyu said indifferently. Rent. Yin Nuashing raised her hand and raised her eyebrows. Since it was divided into levels, it couldn't be for free, right? Ordinary buildings cost 1,000 energy value per month. Loft buildings cost 2,000 energy value per month. Palace buildings cost 4,000 energy value per month. After Guyu finished speaking, he looked at everyone with interest. As he expected, all the new students were dumbstruck, and their jaws were wide open. Was this even possible? They really had to pay rent. By the way, camping is free, but activating the energy arrays will cost more. It will be calculated by the day, Guyu said indifferently. Bah, how ugly. Everyone cursed in their hearts. Immortal rank arrays are free. Pure energy arrays of the devil rank and above cost at least 3,000 a day. Elemental energy arrays cost at least 5,000 a day. Demigod rank arrays cost at least 10,000 a day. Bam! The huge force formed by the words almost knocked everyone to the ground. This was forcing them to earn energy value. Fortunately, it didn't make it so that they couldn't breathe without energy value. If they ran out of energy value, they would suffocate to death. Yin Nuashing's face twitched. Demigod rank arrays cost 10,000 a day. Wouldn't his assets only last for 1.5 days? Bah! I'll construct the arrays myself. Humph! Rolling his eyes, Yin Nuashing snorted. He was also an array master. If he didn't use the Academy's energy arrays, he wouldn't be able to construct them himself. All kinds of condensed natural treasures. In short, anything that is helpful to cultivation can be turned into exchange for energy value, Guyu said. I have a question. Yin Nuashing raised his hand again. Guyu looked at him and nodded, indicating for him to speak. Yin Nuashing took a deep breath, scratched his head, and said, Where's the trial of light? Guyu started. He cast a deep glance at Qin Wentian before turning and pointing to a direction in the north. Over there, the Spirit Light Pagoda. The Trial of Light is separated into 12 levels. After completing a level, you would be able to move on to the next level. It's not recommended for those who haven't reached the Devil rank to attempt it. If you die in the Spirit Light Pagoda, you would be spat out with heavy injuries. The energy they had was only enough for them to squander in the loft. The 3 of them watched Yin Nuashing and Xian walk into the palace with envy and jealousy. They almost could not help but rush in. The thousands of people arranged themselves in a mess for a long time. Everyone had also chosen the place they wanted to live in. There's a small map of the Academy in the token. If you need anything, you can go to the Azure Cloud Pavilion to exchange for it. You can also see what's in the Azure Cloud Pavilion through the token. Of course, if you want to exchange for something, you'll have to go there in person, Guyu said softly. Yin Nuashing nodded. She looked around and finally stopped at the small palace beside the lake. She smiled and said, Then I'll take this one. As soon as she finished speaking, she held Xian's hand and walked into the palace. Before they entered, they could feel a towering flame condensing behind them. Chapter 613. The palace was neither too big nor too small. It had 2 floors. The rooms were on the upper floor, while the lower floor was a spacious hall. It could easily accommodate 100 people. Yin Nuoxing and Xian walked around the palace. They were quite satisfied. It was much smaller than the palaces they lived in outside, but it had all the essentials. There were even cultivation rooms. He pushed open the outermost room of the 5 rooms and poked his head in to take a look. The daily necessities, such as the bed, were all prepared. This palace-level treatment was indeed not bad. What made Yin Nuoxing happy was that the bed was very big. He wiped his face with his palm and took off half of his mask. Then, he shouted excitedly and ran towards the soft bed. As he ran, he changed his clothes into a sleeping robe that was used at home. The robe was so long that it almost touched the ground. He jumped up and lay on the big bed, rolling around on it. Yin Nuoxing hugged the pillow happily and took a deep breath. She was slightly happy. From now on, she was a student of the Long Light Academy. The trial of light was not far away. Yin Nuoxing rolled on the bed for a long time, as if there was no one around. His nightgown was askew and half of his shoulder was exposed. It was not until he felt a gentle gaze staring at him that Yin Nuoxing stopped. He straightened his clothes and looked at Ziyin, who had been standing at the door with a dry smile. He said, "Aren't you going to choose a room? The 5 rooms have the same layout. There's nothing to choose. I'll just rest in whichever room I go." Ziyin shrugged cutely and took off her hat. Her lily-white hands parted her dark purple hair, which was as smooth as purple satin. Then, she walked into the room and sat down on the bed. Mei Mao looked at Yin Nuoxing with a smile. "All right. In any case, the layout here is dispensable to me. It's not like I can sleep here." Yin Nuoxing jumped up from the bed when she saw her sitting on the bed. Taking a deep breath, Yin Nuoxing clenched his fist, and the golden token appeared in his hand. Guyu had said that he could use this token to activate the energy array, so he wanted to see if it was more cost-effective to construct the array himself, or to construct the array in the academy. Yin Nuoxing held the token in her hand and sent a strand of her soul power into the token. Then, the information within was projected in front of her. A light screen condensed into a light screen that slowly appeared. On the light screen, there was a long list of names, pictures, and numbers. Exclusive to the Palace District, 9th grade magic rank, Fire Elemental Energy Array, 6,000 energy value per day. 7th grade magic rank, Pure Energy Array, 3,000 energy value per day. High Demigod rank, Pure Energy Array, 13,000 energy points per day. Yin Nuoxing silently counted the grade of the array and the required energy value. He couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. He smiled bitterly and said, "Forget it. I'll do it myself." His palm streaked across the light screen, and it changed into a list of all kinds of goods. He casually glanced at it, and found that most of the things sold here were extraordinary. There were even demigod-level magic arrays, and he could even see demigod-level magic arrays. There were even demigod-level magic arrays, and he could even see demigod-level magic arrays. There were even 3 lower divine-level magic arrays. They're also selling immortal rank profound arts. However, the 5 million energy value should be exclusive to the rich. Yin Nuoxing looked at the divine rank profound arts and couldn't help but laugh. "Little star, I found something that you should be interested in." Xian, who was sitting at the side, was also flipping through the thousands of lists. When she saw something, her lily-white hand paused. Then, she looked at Yin Nuoxing and said with a smile, When Yin Nuoxing heard this, he moved his head closer and looked at the thing that the slender finger was pointing at. His gaze paused for a moment, and his heart actually beat rapidly. Blood Spirit Pill, Immortal Rank Medicinal Pill. It has the miraculous effect of transforming the bloodline and awakening the bloodline. If it's consumed, it's enough to awaken the dormant and thin bloodline. Yin Nuashing whispered softly. It can awaken the dormant bloodline? If he could get it, wouldn't he be able to awaken his god spirit bloodline? It's useless. A lazy yawn came from Yin Nuashing's soul world. Zi, who was originally lying lazily on the bed, slowly sat up while hugging a pillow. He raised his head, and there were no ripples in his light purple eyes. The blood spirit pill is only of the immortal grade. Although it can indeed awaken the dormant power of the bloodline, you have to think about what your bloodline is. Is the blood of the gods the bloodline of the ancient gods? A bloodline that contains the memory fragments of the vanished era. What can a mere immortal rank medicinal pill do to awaken a bloodline of that level? Z sneered and stood up from the bed. He walked to the side of the table and took a sip of the tea that Xiner handed him. He then said, if it's a peerless rank medicinal pill, or even a god rank medicinal pill, it might be able to awaken your god spirit bloodline. But if it's just immortal rank medicinal pill, then forget it. Woo 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 woo. Yin Nuashing pondered for a while, then rolled his eyes. After looking at the energy required for the blood god's pill, he also shook his head with a bitter smile. 8 million energy, forget it. Is there anything you like? Yin Nuashing smiled and waved his hand as he asked. Xian also shook his head and waved his hand to make the light screen disappear. Just when Yin Nuashing thought that this girl also had no desire, she paused for a moment. Mei Mao stared at him and said very seriously, Little Star, I want to learn a god-rank mystic skill. Yin Nuashing, who had just turned off the light screen, suddenly spat out a breath. He turned his head and looked at her in shock. His tongue moved around in his mouth for a while, and he blinked. He said, whether it's a god-rank mystic skill or a mystic skill, it's very difficult to cultivate. If you're not careful, you might go crazy. I once asked Yuanshi seriously about this, and now I want to ask you very seriously. Girl, are you sure you want to cultivate it? After he finished speaking, he reached out his hand and gently stroked her forehead. He breathed softly and rhythmically as he stared at her very seriously. Amen. Xian nodded solemnly. She raised her head and looked at him. She reached out her lily-white hand and held his cheek. She said word by word seriously, I'm serious. I want to become stronger, so strong that I can help Little Star share the burden. Yin Nuashing stared blankly and asked doubtfully, I don't have any burden? When Xian heard this, she only smiled sweetly and didn't say anything. I want to participate in the banquet in 1.5 months. Xian smiled faintly, causing Yin Nuashing to stare blankly again. He opened his mouth, but didn't say anything. After thinking for a while, Yin Nuashing let out a long sigh. He gently rubbed his soft long hair and nodded. He said, Go, and release the light that belongs to you. I'm your most solid support. If it's a god-rank mystic skill, Zi and I will also teach you how to cultivate it. Little Star isn't going to participate. Xian winked at Mei Mao. She tilted her head and smiled gently. Yin Nuashing shook his head. I'm not interested in these things. I'll probably put all my energy into the trial of light in the spiritual light pagoda. Why don't we go and take a look now? Xian laughed. She held Yin Nuashing's arm and stood up. Mei Mao was so bright that he was intoxicated. Okay. Yin Nuashing also smiled. He changed his clothes quickly and quickly. He was so fast that Xian couldn't see him clearly. He only saw his iconic black windbreaker hanging down. He even put on his mask. Xian tidied up a little. Then, she walked out of the small palace with Yin Nuashing. They left the freshman area and rushed straight towards the northern area. Just as the two of them left the freshman area, 4 figures descended from the sky and landed in front of the small palace. They stared at the two of them as they left. They were the 4 elders who were in charge of receiving them in the void. These 2 little fellows are heading north. Take a guess. Are they going to the War God Shrine to receive a mission? Or are they going to the Spiritual Light Pagoda? Or are they going to the Azure Cloud Pavilion? The middle-aged man still had his arms crossed in front of his chest as he grinned. Old Lin, are you sure that the 2 3-digit divinity values belong to these 2 little fellows? The young man had his hands behind his back. He retracted his gaze from the distance and looked at Lin Yao as he asked with uncertainty. This old man hasn't reached the point where his eyesight is blurry. I can still confirm this point. Lin Yao smiled as he stroked his beard and nodded. Originally, I wanted to confirm with these two little fellows and test them again. However, they actually ran out. The middle-aged man smiled faintly as he shook his head. He waved his hand and said, "Let's go. Let's see what these two little fellows are going to do." TSK, a dignified deity, is following two little brats at the demon level. However, I'm also interested. Let's go and take a look. The young man curled his lips. Then he also smiled. The four people looked at each other and smiled. Their figures flashed and disappeared. The Farlight Academy was very vast. It wasn't the slightest bit smaller than the Red Star Academy that Yin Nuoxing had seen. The two of them flew in the air for nearly an hour. They also asked a few seniors for directions. Only then did they find a remote spiritual light pagoda. It was a pagoda that was 3,000 meters tall. From top to bottom, it was pure gold. It was divided into 12 floors. At the top of the pagoda, there was a golden energy ball that was 10 meters in size. There were also chains that diffused out from it. They wrapped around the body of the pagoda like a seal. Looking at the three big words, Spiritual Light Pagoda, written on the bottom floor, Yin Nuoxing's heart was slightly happy. His gaze was somewhat astonished as he looked at the 3,000-meter-tall pagoda. He could feel a very familiar energy from the pagoda. It was the energy of light. The Spiritual Light Pagoda was one of the places that gathered a lot of people in the Farlight Academy. When Yin Nuoxing and Xian landed outside the pagoda, they could clearly feel the exuberant degree of popularity. There were people constantly rushing over from the surroundings. Furthermore, they were coming in groups. After a group of people landed, there would be a few people who would walk out and enter the Spiritual Light Pagoda. Those who stood still in their original places looked at the people who walked out of their groups with respect. It felt as if they were sending off soldiers who were about to enter the battlefield. Let's go in and take a look as well. Yin Nuoxing smiled at Xian. Soon after, the two of them rushed towards the gigantic pagoda that was like a mountain peak. However, before the two of them could rush in, a figure suddenly appeared in front of them at the entrance, forcibly blocking their path. Startled by the person who had suddenly rushed out to block their path, Yin Nuoxing hurriedly pulled Xian to a stop. His figure froze in place as he cupped his hands towards the person who had just arrived. Then, he glanced at the person. It was an old man in plain clothes with a sloppy beard. After hesitating for a moment, he said, "Elder." The old man smiled as he glanced at the two of them. Then, he looked at the other people who had stopped because of the matter here. After a moment, he turned his gaze back and said, "New faces. Are you this year's new students? Do you have a War God token that is rank 6 or above?" War God token? Yin Nuoxing had a puzzled look on his face as he shook his head and said, "No. We just came in and saw that this pagoda was very strange. Therefore, we came to take a look." Every year, there are reckless new students who recklessly rush into the Spiritual Light Pagoda. In the end, they're sent out with serious injuries by the Spiritual Light Pagoda. Who knows how long it will take for them to recover? After hearing that the two of them were indeed new students, a wave of mocking laughter erupted from the crowd behind them. New students have just entered the High Light Academy, so they naturally don't know these rules. You just entered a few years earlier than the others. What the hell are you mocking new students for? The rumbling shout was like thunder as it rumbled in the air. When everyone heard this voice, they all shrunk their heads and hurriedly turned their gazes. However, they saw three people slowly walking forward from the back. The leader was an enormous man who was over 2 meters tall. He was cursing as he cursed. There was stubble on his rough face, and there was even a scar on his right cheek. His black hair was like a hedgehog, making him look extremely valiant. The thunderous shout had come from this person. The other two people following him, a male and a female, also had outstanding appearances. The female had a cold temperament. Her cheeks were somewhat thin, and her skin was as white as snow. Her eyebrows were picturesque, and she had a head of fine black hair that reached her waist. The ends of her hair were slightly curled up. Coupled with her blue robes, her entire body emitted a cold and condensed aura, causing people to be moved and at the same time, make them feel fear. The other male had a rather handsome appearance. There was always a faint smile on his face. His long hair draped over his shoulders, and his clothes were as white as snow. He had his hand behind his back as he followed the burly man. His eyes slightly turned, causing everyone to hurriedly turn their heads, not daring to meet his gaze. After the burly man shouted, the mocking laughter in the surroundings instantly disappeared. It became incomparably quiet. It was obvious that the identities of these three people were not ordinary, causing everyone to be afraid. "Little Chuan, didn't I tell you not to shout here?" The old man who was blocking Yin Nuoxing and the other person snorted softly as he looked at the burly man with an unfriendly gaze. Uncle Lu, our temperaments are like this. If we don't shout a day or two, we'll get flustered." The burly man scratched his head and laughed loudly. His laughter caused the air to tremble, causing the old man's eyebrows to tremble a few times. The old man who was addressed as Uncle Lu glanced at Yin Nuoxing and the other person. The two of them understood and quickly moved to the side, opening up the entrance. Only then did the old man smile. "What's wrong? Are the three of you planning to break through to the 4th level?" "We're just trying." That freak was seriously injured before he could break through to the 4th level. "We aren't as powerful as him. Every time we break through to the 3rd level, we'll be covered in injuries." The burly man laughed. Only then did Yin Nuoxing turn his head and glance at the three of them. After that, he felt that something was wrong. He inclined his head and looked at the gigantic Sword Mountain peak in the distance. After searching for a while, he started and bitterly smiled. No wonder he felt that the three of them were somewhat familiar. The 7th, 8th, and 10th rankers on the devil rankings, weren't they the elder sisters and brothers of Zhong Songbai and the other two? Chapter 614. Appearing in front of Yin Nuoxing and Xian were the three people ranked in the top 10 of the ranking of demonic battle strength. They were also the three people mentioned by Zhong Songbai when they first came in. Looking at that robust man, they couldn't help but think of Chuan Jingshan. "Okay, if you're in a hurry, you can go in first. I'll explain the rules to these two little girls." Uncle Lu rolled his eyes, walking to the side as he said to the robust man, Chuan Mu's group, "Little girls?" Yin Nuoxing and Xian were startled. The veins on the former's forehead immediately bulged, while Xian tried her best to hold back her laughter, her delicate body lightly shaking. "Wait a moment, there's no hurry. Songling seems to have something to say. It won't be too late to go in after she finishes." Hearing that, Chuan Mu waved his huge hand, then turned his head to look at that cold girl, smiling. That blue gown girl was startled. Mei Mao gave him a glance, hesitating for a while before walking forward. Looking at Yin Nuoxing and Xian, she lightly opened her red lips and said, "Junior sisters, have you ever thought of joining some force?" Yin Nuoxing and Xian were startled, not understanding what was going on. The force formed by Ling's group of 3 only invites girls to join. Hee, you two little girls, if you don't have anyone to back you up in the Farlight Academy, I'm afraid that a lot of trouble will come knocking on your door. On the side, Uncle Lu said indifferently. Even if the two were wearing accessories to cover their faces, it was still very difficult to completely hide themselves, especially with their ethereal temperament. Yin Nuoxing and Xian looked at each other in dismay for a while, before the former sighed and cupped her hands, saying, "Many thanks for senior sister's good intentions, but for the time being, we haven't thought of this matter. Also, senior sister, I'm a man." These last words caused the atmosphere and the surroundings to completely freeze. Chuan Mu and Lin Xian's brother opened their eyes wide, and Zhong Songling even opened her mouth in shock. This kind of reaction again. Yin Nuoxing couldn't help but laugh bitterly when he saw the expressions of the surrounding people, as if they had seen a ghost. Then, he transmitted his voice to Ziyan. This wasn't the first time such a reaction had occurred. "Little star, if you want to blame someone, blame yourself for having a girl's face and a girl's voice. In the end, you're a boy. You're so beautiful. After all, you're still a boy." Ziyan covered her mouth and chuckled. Shaking her head with a bitter smile, Yun Nuashing took a deep breath and looked at Elder Lu. At this moment, his eyes were also wide open, and he didn't react for a long time. Her bitter smile became even more pronounced, and she hurriedly asked, "Elder, how do we get the six-step war God command plate?" The two of them didn't say anything and directly rushed into the huge hall that was like a mountain peak. As the two of them rushed into the hall, they immediately felt a surging, fighting intent that covered the sky and covered the earth, surging over. What appeared before the eyes of Yin Nuashing and Xian was an exceptionally vast hall. The ceiling of the hall was engraved with a starry sky, causing the star energy in their bodies to become somewhat restless. It was like a real star field, looking incomparably gorgeous. The hall was incomparably noisy. Countless figures were gathered inside, and there were even people with soaring fighting intent lingering on their bodies. Yin Nuashing and Xian's gazes looked towards the left and right sides of the hall. The words Mission Hall were floating in the air on the right side. After passing through the door, they could see scrolls floating in the air. There were also words floating in the air. It seemed like some of the missions that had been announced. Those who received the scrolls had surging blood, as if they couldn't wait to complete the mission immediately. On the left side, the words Combat Hall were written in large letters. There were many huge secret rooms there, and there were many elders and students inside. Waves of obscure but heart-palpitating fluctuations were emitted from inside, as if a huge amount of energy was surging. While Yin Nuashing and Xian were sizing up this huge and majestic combat god hall, they felt many gazes suddenly shoot over and land on the two of them. Both of them were tall and had an ethereal temperament. Yin Nuashing's star-like beautiful eyes made him look extremely mysterious. In particular, his exquisite face made the hearts of those who didn't know him palpitate with eagerness. Xian stood gracefully to the side. Her soft long hair was as smooth as dark purple satin. The elegance that came from her bones and the astonishing charm that she exuded with every movement also caused the hearts of those who didn't know her to surge. The two of them stood there without saying a word. Just their temperament and appearance alone attracted 80% of the gazes. Although one of them was wearing a mask and the other was wearing a hat, it didn't stop the crowd from admiring them. It could be said that it made people want to explore further. Hey, look, those two girls are so beautiful. I've never seen them before. Freshmen? Should we go up and talk to them? Could it be the #1 beauty of Xiaoguang City? Yin Nuashing's face couldn't help but twitch when he saw the various gazes around him. His face darkened slightly as he hurriedly pulled Xian's hand and walked into the combat hall. Hey, they're coming over, they're coming over. Many people's hearts jumped when they saw the two of them quickly walking over. They hurriedly opened up a path and looked at the two of them with infatuated gazes. A few people seemed to want to rush up and strike up a conversation, but before they could muster up the courage, the two of them had already walked to the front along the path that was opened up. There were many large secret rooms in the combat hall. Waves of energy surged from within, as if there were people fighting inside. In front of the secret rooms stood several people who looked like teachers. Teacher, we're here to conduct the combat strength test. Yin Nuashing automatically ignored the stunned gazes and walked to the innermost part of the room. He cupped his hands towards the person sitting there and softly said. The teacher raised his head and glanced at the two of them, then stood up and said, 100 energy points, going once. Together. Yin Nuashing straightforwardly took out the token. He waited until he had deducted 200 from it before opening the door of the secret room, after which he turned around and waved at the two of them. Yin Nuashing and Xian looked at each other, then nodded and quickly walked toward the bright secret room. The secret room was very spacious, and the surrounding walls were inlaid with bright crystals, illuminating the room very brightly. They could clearly see that there was nothing special in the room. There was only a huge black square pillar in the middle of the secret room, and there were some talismans carved on the surface of the pillar. Teacher, how do I get a combat god token? Yin Nuashing cupped his hands and asked. The combat god token is divided into levels 1 to 12. Levels 1 to 9 correspond to levels 1 to 9 of the demon rank, and levels 10, 11, and 12 of the demigod rank. The one in the middle of the room is the combat tablet. As long as your attack reaches the standard of that level, you'll be able to obtain the corresponding level of combat god token. The teacher seemed to have guessed that the two of them were new students, so he explained in more detail. Different levels of combat god tokens have different powers. For example, you can enter the higher levels of the Azure Cloud Pavilion, receive higher level missions, and get discounts when you buy things, etc. Alright, who's going first? Give me the token, and I'll give you the combat god token after the test. After finishing, the teacher waved his hand and pointed at the combat tablet in the middle of the room. I'll go first. Zian smiled. She clenched her jade-like hand and threw the token in her hand to the instructor. Then, she stood in front of the pitch-black square pillar and stared at it. Her beautiful eyes narrowed slightly. That's enough. Clear your mind of distracting thoughts and strike with all your might. After receiving the token, the instructor placed it on the battle tablet and took a few steps back. He looked at Zian and nodded at her. Zian nodded solemnly when she heard this. She inhaled a deep breath of air and clenched her jade-like hand. A powerful demonic aura swept out from her body like a storm, causing the surrounding space to fluctuate. The instructor didn't expect the commotion to be so big and was stunned for a moment. Then, he was pushed slightly by the storm, causing his expression to harden as he hurriedly took a few steps back. Zian's 5 elements body and crystal body had strengthened her super strong aura. Naturally, it was not something an ordinary demon rank Sanfeng could compare with. During the test in the mountains, she was able to kill a demigod demon beast single-handedly. Although both sides were injured, it was enough to prove her strength. The water origin and earth origin in her body were shining. She pushed the demonic aura in her body to the extreme. Waves of colorful energy gushed out and gathered in her palm, forming a giant bluish-brown sword. It looked exactly the same as the Netherworld Ruin sword. Boom! Zian's jade-like hands grabbed onto the giant sword, and the rolling demon chi gushed out like a 5-colored tide. It condensed in the middle of the sword, and with a loud bang, it slashed down fiercely. The giant sword turned into a ray of 2-colored light, and fiercely attacked the pitch-black battle power tablet. Clang! The crisp sound of metal clashing resounded in the secret room. Then, the pitch-black battle tablet suddenly lit up. The light lit up the runes on the surface and spread from the bottom to the top. The huge force caused everyone outside the secret room to raise their heads in shock. Chapter 615. BZ. Resplendent rings of light expanded outwards. On the gigantic sword peak, rings of light suddenly appeared, sliding downwards, attracting the attention of countless people in the Far Light Academy. After that, on the devil rankings on the right, a sphere of light slowly condensed, moving from the outermost edge to the innermost edge, as though it was searching for its own position. And when the sphere of light started moving, everyone was stunned to see that in a flash, the sphere of light shot from the top 1,000 to the top 500. In the next blink of an eye, it shot into the top 200. See, which senior is trying to ascend the devil rankings? This momentum of rushing up the rankings is really frightening. In the Far Light Academy, heaven-shaking and earth-shattering cries rang out. The devil rankings represented the peak strength of the students of the Far Light Academy. From the appearance of the sphere of light, everyone knew that this was a character who had never appeared on the devil rankings before. Who is it? Did he keep a low profile all this while just to amaze the world with a single brilliant feat? His momentum seems to be jumping around. He has already entered the top 100. Seems like this person can endure the loneliness and only started to ascend the devil rankings after reaching the 7th or 8th seal. Something big is about to happen. The change in the top 100 is the most terrifying. The transformation of the gigantic sword also attracted the attention of countless students in the Far Light Academy. That voice, that piece of news, instantly spread like wildfire. All of them thought that this dark horse that suddenly appeared on the devil rankings was an old student from the top 3 ranks. Under the nervous gazes of countless people, the sphere of white light continued to jump around. Every time it jumped, it would cause the hearts of countless people to beat. From the top 100, it jumped to 70, 60, 50. And when the sphere of white light struggled to enter the top 40, many people in the academy hurriedly gulped down a mouthful of saliva. This was simply too exaggerated. Wah, damn. F asterisk asterisk K, I was pushed down. Top 40, 39, 38. It's still advancing. It's still advancing. Everyone stared agitatedly at the sphere of white light, not blinking for fear that they would miss the most exciting part if they blinked. At this moment, everyone was very curious as to who this person was. However, before the sphere of white light condensed and transformed into a physical projection, no one would be shown. This included the person's name, causing everyone to feel extremely anxious. It stopped. 35. 35. After the white light reached the 35th position, it finally stopped and leaned toward the 34th position in a human-like manner. However, it seemed to have sensed the strength of the person in the 34th position and could only reluctantly return to the 35th position. It knocked the person in the 35th position back and then slowly condensed into a human form. Seeing this scene, everyone knew that this position was about to be fixed. Countless people opened their eyes wide and curiously watched as the white light changed and solidified. Then, everyone saw a slender figure standing there. It was a girl in a purple dress. She had an extremely perfect figure. She had long and slender legs and a small waist. If one looked further up, one would see her alluring curves. A silver-white crescent necklace hung around her elegant and fair neck, adding a noble aura to her. When that beautiful face appeared before everyone's eyes, it was as though even the heavens and earth had lost their color. She had a tall figure and an extremely beautiful face. Her skin was as white as snow, and her eyebrows were picturesque. Her long and narrow dark purple Mao had a warm and ethereal smile on her face. Her eyes were sparkling and translucent like crystals, as though they reflected the most beautiful scenery in the world. Her beautiful dark purple hair reflected the sunlight, like a perfect satin hanging down from her back. It made the girl in front of them look like a fairy from a painting, her charm peerless. Wow, what a beautiful girl. Why have I never seen her in the Farlight Academy? Gulp, my heart is moved. It's as though an arrow has pierced through my heart. I finally understand what love at first sight is. Forget it. She's ranked 35th on the Devil rankings. Why don't you give it a try? I guarantee that your ending will be extremely miserable. Quick, look at her name. Seeing that the person who came from behind was actually a peerlessly beautiful girl, the entire Farlight Academy was in an uproar. The sounds of discussion and love-struck voices converged together, wanting to overturn the heavens. And after all the voices turned into discussions about her name, those nervous gazes turned to the projection's head. They only saw that the light there was beginning to dissipate bit by bit, transforming into a row of words. Devil rankings, 35th rank. Freshman, silence. The atmosphere of the entire Farlight Academy froze in an instant. It was as though the temperature of a star had suddenly dropped below the freezing point. Those who were still roaring passionately were now in a daze as they stared at the figure of that peerlessly beautiful girl. They felt as though their heads were about to explode, suspecting that they were hallucinating or that their presbyopia was acting up in advance. Freshman? A freshman ascended the Devil rankings? A senior ranked 35th was kicked back by a single kick? Has such a thing ever happened before in history? Those with such strength would never be recruited again. The recruitment criteria of the Farlight Academy was that the highest-ranked student couldn't exceed the 3rd rank of the Devil rankings. What was going on? F asterisk CK. The heavens are being overturned. The heavens are being overturned. She's going to be in the headlines. Big news. Big news. Wait, what's the meaning of this? There are only 3 question marks in her name. Does she not know, or does she not have a name? Extra, extra. A freshman who obtained the 3rd rank of the Devil rankings snatched the position of a senior rank student who obtained the 8th rank of the Devil rankings. In the Far Light Academy, numerous gazes of shock, or more accurately, dumbfounded, stared at that figure. Their jaws couldn't be retracted for a short period of time. The commotion on the Devil rankings also attracted the attention of the freshmen. However, the vast majority of people didn't recognize this peerlessly beautiful fairy. They had only seen Zi Yin wearing a hat, but the projection of Zi Yin didn't wear one. Although the majority of the people here didn't recognize her, it didn't mean that everyone couldn't recognize her. For example, Zhong Songbai and the other 2 who walked out from the pavilion. F***CK. She's already here on the first day. She's already ranked 35th on the Devil rankings. Monster. No, she's a monster. Mountain's jaws were wide open. He felt his head twitching. I'm afraid this is unprecedented. Zhong Songbai and Lin Xin exchanged glances. In the end, they could only bitterly laugh. As for all of this, Yin Nuoxing and Xian, who were in the combat hall, had no idea. As for that teacher, his jaw had already dropped and snot was about to flow out from his nose. The test in the combat hall would directly cause the rankings to be updated. However, even if he cracked his head, he couldn't understand why a freshman will be able to enter the 35th position on the Devil rankings on the first day. Yin Nuoxing had no idea what had happened. She only saw that after Xian's sword slashed down, the 4 pillars were quickly engulfed by the light. All the runes on the pillars lit up. She silently calculated in her heart and felt that this attack had already surpassed the 6th rank of the Devil rankings. Only then did she smile and nod at her. Teacher. Seeing that the teacher was so shocked that he seemed to have lost his soul, Yin Nuoxing tilted her head in confusion. At this moment, Xian also took the token from the combat hall and put it away without even looking at it. The teacher was startled by the shout. When he came back to his senses, he saw that Yin Nuoxing had already walked forward. When he got closer, he realized that there was a small notch where Xian's token was placed. It looked exactly the same as the token. Seeing that notch, he smiled and stuffed his token into it. After stuffing the token, Yin Nuoxing took 2 steps back and took a deep breath. Her right hand was clenched so tightly that it made a cracking sound. He didn't take out his divine weapon. As long as it reached the 6th rank of the Devil rankings, he still had some confidence. If it didn't work, he would try again. Therefore, this time, he wanted to battle with his bare hands. Huh! With a low shout, the power of the stars in his body surged. The aura that rushed out of his body seemed to have condensed into a starry sky. Finally, it condensed on his right fist. 5 small talismans slowly formed on the tip of his fist. Then, with all his strength, he punched the combat hall. When Yin Nuoxing threw this punch, the discussion outside, which had not stopped, was suddenly interrupted by a series of screams. Another one! Another one! Don't tell me it's another freshman? Everyone suddenly raised their heads and looked at the huge sword peak. Even the elders were staring at the huge sword hilt nervously. Their hearts were beating rapidly. At the outermost position of the Devil rankings, another light ball appeared. However, as soon as this light ball appeared, it rushed towards the middle position at an extremely fast speed. In just an instant, it rushed into the top 100 positions. 100, 80, 60, so fast. 40. Damn, it rushed into the top 40 in 3 seconds. It didn't stop there. It already passed the position of the girl just now. This time, it must be a senior. It definitely can't be a freshman. If it's still a freshman, I'll livestream myself eating glazed crystals. The flying ball of light immediately shocked everyone. Loud cheers pierced through the clouds. Those who didn't know better would think that there was a banquet going on. That ball of light wasn't as gentle as the previous one. It directly charged towards the projection that was ranked 20th. Then, it bumped into the projection and took its place. The projection that was originally ranked 20th glared fiercely at the ball of light. Then, it gloomily walked towards the projection that was ranked 21st. Then, it pushed the projection that was ranked 21st, causing it to move to the 22nd position. 20, 20, 20. Look, it's out. After that light ball occupied the 20th position, it transformed into the appearance of a girl. She had an exquisite face and a pair of colorful eyes that shone like the stars. Her dazzling long hair was incomparably gorgeous under the sunlight. When Mei Mao looked around, she actually gave off a sense of arrogance that looked down on the world. But when one looked at her young face, they only felt that she was very cute. She was just like the girl that was ranked 36th, peerless in her generation. Looking at the top of her head, Devil rankings, ranked 20th. Freshman. The introduction was exactly the same, and the name was exactly the same, shocking the entire academy into a deathly silence. That guy who was live streaming himself eating glazed crystals. Hurry up and come out. This elder brother has decided to sponsor 100 caddies of superior grade glazed crystals. I will also sponsor 100 caddies. Hurry up and watch the live stream. Live stream? The silence was broken in an instant. Cries and howls rang out in the academy. Many people even scolded him for cheating. There must be a problem. How could a freshman be ranked on the Devil rankings? Moreover, it was the top 40. This must be fake. Over at the Spiritual Light Tower, everyone was shocked, including Chuan Mu and the other two. Especially Zhong Songling, who recognized Yin Nuoxing and Zian. She was so shocked that her red lips were trembling. A freshman that she had just met had rushed to the top 40 of the Devil rankings. Even she would not believe it if she told others. And the two main culprits of this storm were currently discussing the state of their strength in detail. I only used 70% of my strength. Originally, I wanted to use all my strength to activate the 5-element sky formation. However, ever since the carrier turned into a crystal, I felt that my strength should be equivalent to 8-9 seals of the Devil rankings. Therefore, I did not use all my strength. Zian rubbed his wrist and said softly, "As for me, I only used about 50% to 60%. I am afraid that if I break the battle tablet, I will not be able to use the power of space and elemental energy." Yin Nuoxing smiled and stretched, saying, "If you break the battle tablet and ask me for compensation, that would not be good. I am not willing to do that." "Teacher, it should be fine now. Can you give us the God of War tablet?" Yin Nuoxing turned her head and looked at the teacher, who was already in a daze. She smiled and cupped her hands. The instructor was already in a daze, and his consciousness was blurred. He didn't even hear what Yin Nuoxing said. He just took out 2 rectangular tokens from his arms and then stuck them on Yin Nuoxing's and Ziyan's tokens. A moment later, the 2 numbers 9 and 8 appeared, which almost made him spit out a mouthful of blood. The God of War token's initial levels were level 9 and level 8. In other words, the attack that the 2 of them had just released was already the full strength attack of a 9 seals of the Devil rankings and 8 seals of the Devil rankings. 9th level, 8th level. The teacher murmured in a daze. When Yin Nuoxing saw the numbers 9 and 8 on the tablet and heard what the teacher said, she suddenly understood something and could not help but laugh. After going through 2 troubles, they finally settled the prerequisites. It seemed like they could go to the Spirit Light Tower now. "Let's go. We will rest for a night and go tomorrow." Yin Nuoxing turned her head and looked at Zian, laughing softly. Zian smiled and nodded. She took 2 steps forward and leaned into his embrace. Yin Nuoxing stomped her feet, and a magic circle flashed and disappeared with the 2 of them. The teacher was left alone in the secret room in a daze. He did not come back to his senses for a long time. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.